This is what it is. This is who I am. This is where I finally take my stand. I didn't want to fall, but I don't have to go. I'm not the one with two star hands. Giving him the best of everything that's left of the life inside this man. I've been going again. This is who I am.
Today on Fresh Black Coffee, we're honored to have a visit with former NASA administrator and US Congressman Jim Bridenstine. Since leaving government service, Jim has been instrumental in developing the aerospace advancements of several companies and assisting the U.S. government in utilizing the private sector resources to meet our national security priorities. The podcast originates as a YouTube live segment. Sadly, YouTube's platform had a failure just seconds after the segment went live. So we've lost the video, but we had a backup audio of most of the conversation. Let's now join the interview in progress with Dave and Eddie and Jim Bridenstine.
In other words, if you're going to do something new, you have to end something that was currently going on. Mm-hmm. And that guarantees that you never get the innovation that you need. So we said, let's have multiple providers that are competing on cost and innovation to provide a service to the U.S. government rather than the government owning and operating it.
Has that proven to be a good decision?
It's been fantastic. So we've done it now with resupply of the International Space Station. Mm-hmm. We buy a service. We don't own and operate the hardware. Mm-hmm. We've done it now with crew to the International Space Station. With SpaceX, there has been success. Boeing had some challenges, but they're going to come back and be a competitor with SpaceX. And then now we're doing, and this was a program I started when I was at NASA, we're going to replace the International Space Station with commercial space stations. Mm-hmm. So again, the government will be a customer, but not the owner and the operator. And the reason that's important is you want these companies to compete on cost, innovation, and safety, driving down the cost, increasing the access. You also want them getting customers that are not the U.S. government. And that's what drives down the price to the taxpayer. Mm-hmm. We all want to do stunning things in space, and there's a lot to be done. We're creating new advanced materials, regenerative medicine, new pharmaceuticals. Microgravity has tremendous value, and we're only right now at the tip of the iceberg. We don't fully know everything that's going to come from it. But what we do know is that it's going to be a very large market. And right now we need to have commercial companies doing it. If it's the U.S. government doing it, it'll never get where it needs to go.
And that's where the innovation came in.
That's
right?
exactly right.
I mean, the reusability that Elon's working so hard on. Right?
Yeah, so reusability is a big piece of the success. It's also true that the miniaturization of electronics, the reusability, and just the miniaturization of everything, quite frankly. Like the cost of getting access to space, it's all based on mass. If you can remove the mass, you can significantly reduce the cost. So all of we look at our iPhones and things, we think about how computing power has just improved and improved. Batteries are better, and everything else. So we can do a lot more today with a lot less mass, and that changes the game for how we do space.
So now, where are you, because you would know a lot more than us for sure and a lot of people, but, there's that controversy or the skepticism on whether we truly sent astronauts to the moon.
Sure.
Yeah, right. Did we send astronauts to the moon?
You would be surprised at how much I get asked this question. The answer is yes, we absolutely sent astronauts to the moon. Let me tell you, and I don't want to sound offensive here or anything, but the reality is, I hear from people, hey, the moon landing was faked. I hear that from knuckleheads, and I let
Joe
them know.
Rogan, come on.
I let them know. I asked them which one was faked, because we landed on the moon 6 times.
Sure, I forgot about that.
We had 12 people on the surface of the moon, 400,000 people working on the project.
Hardware's still up there, right?
It's still there. You can look at it. So yes, we landed on the moon. We landed on the moon 6 times. By the way, the people who had the most to gain from us faking it would have been the Soviets.
Thank you. That's where I was going.
And then they congratulated us on each one. And then eventually we partnered with them. And instead of it being the Apollo program, we switched it to the Apollo-Soyuz program.
Yes.
Or if you were in Russia, they called it the Soyuz Apollo program.
Of course.
And it was one of our astronauts. It was Tom Stafford from the great state of Oklahoma, General Tom Stafford, who actually went to the Apollo-Soyuz when they joined the two capsules in space. He went through the hatch and shook hands with his cosmonaut counterpart. So the reality is, yes, the Apollo program was very real. It was very successful. By the way, not only did we land on the moon 6 times, if you back up to Apollo 8, which is my favorite NASA mission in history, we orbited the moon on Apollo 8. We orbited the moon on Apollo 10, which again was Tom Stafford from Oklahoma. And then of course the famous Apollo 13 mission, of which they made movies about. All of that would be really hard to fake over that period of time.
Well, the only thing that could give them the momentum to get back to Earth is by looping around the moon.
That's right. You're traveling at 35,000 miles per hour in one direction.
It's a slingshot.
You got to grab the gravity of the moon, and it pulls you the other direction.
So now brings me to another question that many have. Is there a secret base on the dark side?
I will tell you, one of the reasons it's important for us to go back to the moon is because for the first time in history, people have landed on the far side of the moon. It's kind of a misnomer. It's not the dark side. There's the far side. So the moon is tidally locked to the Earth. So as the moon is orbiting the Earth, the moon, we're always looking at the same side of the moon.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that's always the side with light.
Yeah, so it's the hidden side.
So the far side of the moon, we have never landed there, but now the Chinese have.
Well, the Chinese have landed.
Yes, they have landed on the far side of the moon. Now, not with humans, to be clear. It's all robotic, but we've not done that. We haven't had a mission to do it, but now that they have, we should be focused
Well, you lose radio contact, right?
That's right. So
unless you have some satellite out there that you can both talk.
So when I was the NASA administrator, they landed on the far side. They made a big deal about it. China put out like a full-page spread in The Economist magazine declaring that they were the preeminent spacefaring nation and all these things. To be clear, I just want to make sure people understand this. We could have landed on the far side of the moon. We could have done it on any Monday we wanted to. Yeah. It requires a communications relay. That's what it requires. And we can do that. It's not hard. Just to be clear, when I was the NASA administrator, we had landed on Mars 9 times, and we were the only country that had done that.
Right.
It is far more difficult to land on Mars than it is to land on the moon. Mars has a very thin atmosphere. It's, of course, a much further distance. It has to be all autonomous. You have to do entry, descent, and landing, which is really challenging in a very thin atmosphere. Mars is harder than landing on the far side of the moon, but it was amazing how much credit China got for landing on the far side of the moon. We didn't have a mission to do that. We now have a mission to do that. By the way, China has now landed on Mars as well.
Good.
So we are at risk of falling behind. And it's not just about demonstration of technological power or national pride or any of those things. This is about national security. And when I talk about national security, what we do at NASA is in the open, and it demonstrates what we can do. A lot of what we do on the national security side of space is classified. And so those kind of things, you can't talk about, but you deter the enemy by doing things in the open. And what we do at NASA is in the open. Yeah. And people can see that we are very capable.
Yeah, the early space shuttle flights, they would say this is a secret military payload. Well, that was GPS as part of it, right?
Yep.
And we now all enjoy GPS, and we can talk about it, but at the time, we really didn't want people to know.
And we think about GPS and how dependent we are on it today. This is again a big challenge that we're facing. That timing signal from GPS is necessary for banking transactions in this country. If we lose that timing signal, it significantly disrupts banking. Imagine in America where we can't get money out of the bank. The ATM system, for example, we think about the power grid is dependent on a timing signal from GPS. We regulate the flows of electricity based on a timing signal from GPS. All of these systems have to be autonomous, and they have to be based on timing. Imagine if we lose GPS, we lose banking, we lose the power grid. We've been without, and here in Oklahoma, a lot of us we've been days without power before. It's not fun. Imagine not being able to access power for weeks or months on end, if not longer, if you lose that timing signal from GPS. Then we also think about there's our wireless networks. Think about your cell phone. All of us use a cell phone. That wireless network is dependent on a timing signal from GPS, as well as a lot of other. This is why it's so important. China is launching anti-satellite missiles. They're launching co-orbital anti-satellite satellites. So think of a satellite that can fly in formation with another satellite and do it damage. And we, as a nation, are dependent on this constellation we call GPS. And as they are building capability to ruin GPS for us, they're also building their own GPS constellation. They call it Beidou. So if they're building their own timing and navigation capability, we call it PNT, position, navigation, and timing. If they're building their own PNT while building capability to destroy our PNT, we should, as a nation, be thinking about that and understand the implications of what it would be like in the United States without GPS. And it's devastating. It's one of the reasons we were very focused when I was in the House on creating the Space Force. And again, it's one of those things we didn't talk about it a lot because in those days there wasn't just a lot of excitement or interest in space. But I think it's really it's changing now, and people are recognizing it.
Yeah, we've talked recently. Trump has announced this Golden Dome.
Yep.
Can you give us the nuts and bolts on that?
Yeah, so clearly we need a missile defense capability.
Yes.
We've seen what's been going on with Israel and Iran, and these rogue nations have the ability to reach out. We think about North Korea and Iran. We have, for the long time, we've had a limited missile defense against rogue nations, Iran and North Korea. However, if there is a barrage that goes too much beyond that, we don't have the ability to defend against that. And so President Trump said we need to have a missile defense capability. We can do it today. We do it with all types of weapon systems. I'm a Navy pilot by trade. We love our Aegis cruisers. They have missile systems that can intercept, ballistic missiles and other types of missiles.
So you're saying up to now we've been dependent on following from the launch site, but now you want something that is more focused on covering an umbrella over us.
The whole country against a much bigger attack.
Regardless of where the attack comes from,
That's
right?
right, yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
So this is where space matters. I mean, if you look at what we've been doing over in Israel and Iran, a number of missile attacks have come, and you see these explosions happen in space. You can watch it. Those missiles are going into suborbital space and then coming back down. So killing a missile in space is hard. If it's going, they call it partial orbital kind of. If it goes all the way around the globe in space, now you got to kill it there. There's these new weapons. They call them hypersonics. You guys are probably familiar, but these new weapons where you're kind of at the edge of space, but you have enough atmosphere up there where you can actually do a weave and you can maneuver significantly. So now when you're flying at Mach 6 or 7 and you're doing a high speed weave using the upper atmosphere to maneuver your missile, it becomes very difficult to intercept.
Yeah, that's not the optimal place to intercept.
That's right.
Yeah.
So we have to use space to detect and track these types of weapons. And if you're going to try to kill a hypersonic weapon with another hypersonic weapon, it's a fool's errand. You're going to, and by the way, a lot of defense contractors want America to spend money on this. It's not going to work. It's going to take a ton of money. It's going to waste your money, and a lot of people are going to make money doing the wrong thing, which, by the way, is not unusual in the government. And I can tell you that. What we really need is we need directed energy. We need directed energy from space. A missile can outrun or outmaneuver a missile. You can't outrun the speed of light.
Lasers, we're talking.
Directed energy. I'm just going to say directed energy.
Okay, fair enough.
That's what we need.
So it sounds like lasers are getting more complicated than we can even talk about with national security issues, right?
All I'm saying is you can use directed energy to confuse, disrupt, destroy technology, and you can do it from space, and missiles can't outrun that. And that's we need we need lots of space-based capability for detection and tracking. We need space-based capability for, we call it a transport layer, that data. If you need fire control quality coordinates on a track, you got to be able to transport that information around the globe. And then you've got to be able to have some type of end game that says we're going to destroy that.
Yeah.
And so all of this is going to be dependent on space.
Okay, so if you're using directed energy, you don't have the incidental harm. Well, yeah, I guess you still would. I'm thinking the Iron Dome, when they intercept over Jerusalem or Tel Aviv, and then debris scatters and comes down, that can kill you.
It will, yeah.
Yeah.
In fact, it has, yeah.
So at least your laser your directed energy is not part of the problem or adding to it.
That's right. That's the intent is if you're going that fast and you can put directed energy on that target, as it comes back into the atmosphere, it'll just burn up, evaporate.
Okay, and
that's not always the case, to be clear.
And that laser can follow a moving target, can't it?
Absolutely.
And that's the thing that we can adjust, direct with aids of computers.
Unlimited salvos.
So
Yeah.
this is basically going back to Ronald Reagan's,
Yes.
what do you call it?
Strategic Defense Initiative.
Right.
Star Wars.
Sky Wars.
They
Sky
called
Wars.
it, yeah.
Yeah, Sky
Yep,
Wars.
that's exactly the difference. Is today, what's amazing is it got called Star Wars because the Democrats were trying to make fun of it.
Sure they were.
And Ronald Reagan owned it. He was like, "Yeah, it's Star Wars. We
Yeah.
like Star Wars. It's cool."
Yeah, but there are people on the other side of the world that believed it.
They did believe it. And you know why they believed it? This is so important. And Americans don't appreciate this enough. The Strategic Defense Initiative, which was the Star Wars program, we spent very little money on it. As a nation, very little money. And people said, and the Democrats were right, it's too expensive. It's not achievable. We're not going to be able to accomplish this. They were right. Guess what? We never accomplished it. However, the Soviets believed we could do it. And they spent a whole lot of money trying to mitigate our program that was really smoke and mirrors, quite frankly.
It collapsed them.
It was a piece of it. I'm not going to say it was
Yeah,
everything.
Rush Limbaugh says it's what collapsed
Right.
them, right?
I will also tell you the reason they believed it, because 12 years prior to that, we had people walking on the moon. That's why. They saw that the United States of America, if we wanted to, we could do anything we put our minds to. John F. Kennedy said we were going to walk on the moon in 1961.
Yeah,
By 1969, we were walking on the moon.
Yeah.
And we did it with 6 missions. The Soviets, they were like, they tried and they tried and they tried and they couldn't make it happen. So that was a piece of the collapse of the Soviet Union eventually. But then they decided, hey, we're just going to partner with them on Apollo-Soyuz. And then when we announced the Strategic Defense Initiative, while domestically the political parties were fighting and saying, this can't be done. At least one of the parties said it couldn't be done. On the other side of the globe, they said, well, if they want to make it happen, they're going to make it happen. So we got to have a solution.
Yeah, but what you're talking about now, or Trump is Golden Dome,
That's right.
is essentially that same concept.
It's a missile defense shield, and a lot of it's going to be space based. Not all of it. There's going to be a lot of architecture on the ground. There's going to be surface to air missiles, and we have a lot of that in place now. We don't have it in the volumes necessary. The ground based interceptors, the SM-3s, all these different missiles that can do different types of intercepts. THAAD, terminal high altitude area defense. These are all weapon systems that exist today. In fact, they were proven very capable at Doha just recently. But we don't have them in the volumes necessary to protect the entire homeland of the United States.
Right.
So we could quickly get to an initial operating capability that would be broad if we just expanded our current capabilities and used them here in the United States. We could do that. It's also true that while that works against ballistic missiles, it doesn't work against hypersonics. So what we've got to do is we've got to start developing a lot of other capability for the hypersonic threat, and that's what the space-based layer is going to be very necessary for.
Wait a
So
minute.
let me ask you, I want to go back. So I want to go back a bit to the moon situation. So if we landed, how many landings do we have? 3, 4?
On the moon?
On the moon.
6. 6 landings, each one with 2 people.
Okay. So if we were able to land 6 people.
12 people total.
Thank you.
Yeah. 6 times 2.
6 times 2, correct. Thank you. So we were able to land 12 people on the moon, 50 years ago?
Yeah, 1969
69
to 1972.
72, right. So why has it been 50 years, over 50 years now, that we have not been able to land anyone?
2 big reasons. Number one, we haven't had a mission to do so. And so for the longest time, we had no mission to land on the moon because it just wasn't necessary. And then when Columbia happened in 2003, I was on an aircraft carrier in the Persian Gulf when that happened. When the Columbia accident happened, George W. Bush said, if we're going to put American astronauts at risk, we're going to do big things. We're not going to just stay in low Earth orbit. And he put together a plan to go to the moon. By the way, it was actually his dad that initiated it. It was called the Strategic Defense Initiative. No, I'm sorry. No,
Okay.
I'm confusing acronyms here. It was the they called it the George W. Bush called it the Space Exploration Initiative. And his dad started it prior. He said he wanted to go to the moon, but then Bill Clinton canceled it. And then George W. Bush reinitiated it after Columbia. He called it, it was the Vision for Space Exploration, VSE. The Vision for Space Exploration is what George W. Bush created. And then when Obama came into office, he canceled it. And then Trump, came out and said, we're going back to the moon. And we called it the Artemis program.
Okay.
And I worked really hard, quite frankly, with Democrats to make sure that it had bipartisan support because I wanted the program to go beyond the problem in America. And this is just when we're doing stuff like the moon or Mars, this is the challenge that we face. You're talking about multi-decadal, multi-generational types of things. And
Multi-administrations.
Multi-administrations. So when you have administration after administration after administration canceling the previous administration's initiatives, you waste billions of dollars and go nowhere.
Yeah.
And Eddie, that's the point you're trying to make, which is why haven't we been to the moon? Well, because we've been cast back and forth by different administrations throughout time.
Let's answer the one thing, because I've listened to Joe Rogan's big expose of why he thinks it was fake. And the one thing that I think had some sense to it, but I don't understand enough, is about some radiation belt.
Yeah.
And if we're going to assume listen, Jim, you've never lied to me, okay? So I believe you. And we saw those guys, those astronauts, those 12, generally live a good long life, pretty healthy. I mean, and they were fit. They were the right stuff. I didn't see the signs of radiation harm to them physically.
Yeah.
Is it not a thing?
No, it is. You just go through it quickly. So there are, so we think about the Earth has a molten core. And that molten core, as the Earth turns, that molten core is sloshing around, we have this magnetosphere that covers the Earth. That's how we're able to live on Earth. We can't live on other planets, can't live on the moon, because radiation is constantly pelting the moon. But here on Earth, we're protected from the radiation of the sun. We're protected from the radiation of deep space. And as that radiation hits the Earth, think about subatomic charged particles. That's what we're talking about. Coming out of the sun, coming from deep space. Those subatomic, because they're charged, and we have a magnetosphere, they get trapped. And they don't make no mistake, they do hit the Earth, which is why we get suntans. But a lot of those subatomic charged particles get trapped in this, what we call the Van Allen radiation belts. Okay. And we see this. If you go to the northern latitudes, you can see, the beautiful green sky, the northern lights, all that stuff. So yes, there is radiation for sure in these Van Allen radiation belts. However, radiation itself does not kill you instantaneously. If you punch through it quickly, you'll get radiation, but it doesn't kill you. For example, if you get an X-ray, you're getting radiation, but it doesn't kill you. This is probably a higher dose than you would get in an X-ray for sure, but it's not lethal. Now, if you hung out in the Van Allen radiation belt for hours or days, it would be a lethal dose. But you punch through, you get on the other side. Now, once you're on, so that's where the most danger is, those Van Allen radiation belts. But you just fly through it, and then you go to the moon. Now, even in deep space, there's still a lot of radiation dose. When you get to the surface of the moon, that radiation dose is cut in half.
How's that?
Because it doesn't go through the moon. It's only coming from above. It's not coming from below.
Gotcha.
So that's one of the reasons we need to get back to the surface of the moon. And by the way, if you can get under the surface of the moon, there's no radiation dose at all. So you could stay for long periods of time if you can get under the surface. Now, if you go back to Buzz Aldrin and Neil Armstrong, they got off the surface of the moon, and afterwards there was a solar flare that pelted the moon. Back then, we didn't have the knowledge or information or understanding, but had they been hit with that solar flare, it's very possible that they would not have survived long, healthy lives.
Okay.
But they didn't. They got off, and that solar flare hit after they were gone. But to make it clear, I mean,
okay.
Look, I used to fly an E-2 Hawkeye. That's a big radar plane.
Okay.
And there's a lot of radiation in there too. We always used to joke, all of us have daughters. We don't have sons because of the radiation dose that we get. But the reality is, you can survive radiation. It makes changes. We saw this with the Kelly brothers. One of them, Mark Kelly, is a senator now. Scott Kelly, his brother. One stayed on Earth. One spent 9 months in orbit, and then they looked at their DNA. And these are dudes that were under the Van Allen radiation. Low Earth orbit is under the Van Allen radiation belt, but there's still more radiation there than there is on the surface of the Earth. And yes, we studied their DNA. Their DNA had significantly changed, even though they were twins. And that's because of the radiation dose. So there is radiation, but we manage it. We limit the dose to a certain amount that we know reduces the probability of creating long-term problems.
So the Van Allen's closer to the Earth than is the moon, right?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
It's about, I think if it gets pretty serious around 1,600 kilometers. It might be 1,600 miles. I'm trying to remember, but somewhere around there.
Okay.
Just straight up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So our satellites are inside of it.
Mostly.
Now,
we have satellites that are outside of it too. So low Earth orbit satellites are below it, and then we've got geostationary orbit, which is way above it. Geostationary orbit is as the Earth is turning, you're basically your orbital period is the same as the rotation of the Earth.
Right.
And that's about that's like 23,000 miles from the Earth.
Yeah, I'm thinking DirecTV, where we all here in Tulsa point our satellite dish to Dallas and then up in the sky above Dallas.
That's it. So you're pointing at a geostationary orbit belt when you do that, and that's well above the Van Allen radiation belt.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
My question, Jim, is we had talked earlier about your educational background.
Yep.
Economics and psychology.
And business.
And business.
And you,
right.
Just talking to you, went back to school for this job at NASA.
But that's what I was trying to say. How does someone with basically a business and psychology degree end up becoming as knowledgeable in scientific areas? Is it just because you're that smart?
Oh, no.
Or was there a learning curve there for you on having to kind of readjust?
Yeah. So I was never I grew up wanting to be a pilot. That's what I did. I first grade, they ask you what you want to be when you grew up. I drew a picture of a guy with a hat standing in front of an airplane. I said I want to be a pilot. I spelled it Pieleot, which meant I knew how to spell pie in those days.
Yes.
So it shows you how brilliant I was. Not very, is what I'm pointing out. But at the end of the day, I always wanted to be a pilot. When I went to Rice, I studied economics, business, and psychology. I graduated. Even before I graduated, I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. I was interviewing for investment banking jobs and consulting jobs, had some really good offers. And I called my dad one day, and I was like, Dad, I just don't want to do this. Like, it's not my thing. Like, I don't want to sit in a cubicle, and I know I'm insulting probably a lot of your audience now. That's not my intent. It just wasn't where I was in my life at the time. My dad was like, what do you want to do? I said, well, I want to be a pilot. It's what I've always wanted to do. And I know your son probably had the same maybe thing when he was growing up, Coast Guard pilot himself. So he was like, well, I didn't send you to Rice for you to tell me you want to be a pilot, but okay, if that's what you want to do, talk to the recruiter. So, of course, when I grew up, the movie Top Gun was popular summer after my 5th grade year. And of course, so then I was attracted to naval aviation because I wanted to do the aircraft carrier thing. And so when I graduated from Rice, I joined the Navy. became a pilot. Now, fast forward, you learn a whole lot when you're a Navy pilot. And I wasn't an engineer, but I knew a lot about aviation. I knew a lot about the national security apparatus of the United States and all I flew combat in Iraq and Afghanistan. So then I get to Congress. Mm-hmm. And what I found was that in Congress, they're all a bunch of lawyers. Mm-hmm. Now I'm going to insult even more of your audience. But the lawyers, you start talking about frequency hopping for anti-jam capability or encryption for signals. And like, they just don't, it's not their thing. They're not interested. And what I could realize quickly, and you guys know this, when I got to Congress, I voted against John Boehner, and I
remember that.
Yeah, I was not liked by the Democrats because I was a Republican, and then I alienated myself with Republicans, and I'm trying to figure out how do I be effective in this body.
I remember you asked me we're sitting in the back seat at a county Republican convention. You said, Dave, you think I'm going to get primaried? And I just said, of course you are.
Of course you are.
Yeah, and you're like, I said, you made it look easy, Jim. I know it's not easy. You know it's not, but you made it look too easy.
Yeah.
But the funny thing is, it didn't come from Boehner's team. Somehow you got spared.
I did.
The next one.
Well, they made efforts, and we know that, but it's fine. I'm past it all. Yeah. I'm not interested in politics anymore. Sure. I'm just trying to do what's right for the country. And and in those days, I was what I realized was when it comes to national security space, a lot of the language matches naval aviation, military aviation in general. And a lot of the technology is similar, and it's redundant. And of course, in military aviation, you're dependent on all those space-based capabilities. The intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance capabilities, the global navigation and timing systems, the missile warning systems, the nuclear command and control, over the horizon communications. All of these things I was familiar with because I was a Navy pilot. And so I get to Congress and I can make an impact in these areas by baking things into legislation that nobody's paying any attention to. And so that's kind of how I got into the whole space thing. I was on the right committees: Armed Services Committee, Subcommittee on Strategic Forces, which dealt with all of our national security space capabilities.
And weather.
And weather, yeah. So that was on the Science Committee, Subcommittee on the Environment, which deals with the weather capabilities of our country. And of course, every year I was in Congress, I had constituents killed in tornadoes, and we were trying to solve that problem. So I started delving into all these space issues, and I finally crafted a very comprehensive space reform bill called the American Space Renaissance Act. And the whole space community, like, I became their go-to guy for all things space in Congress. And then, surprisingly, all the members of Congress that were lawyers, they were coming to me on space issues, and I became the go-to guy for space in Congress. And so I found my niche. That's what happened.
Good.
I found my niche.
And then your 6 years was up.
Yeah. Well, then I get a call from President Trump.
Yeah.
And it was an interesting call. I don't know. It was shortly after. It was the first time I talked to him. Was shortly after what was going on at the time.
I thought it was right before the general election.
It was right before the general election. Look, you know this. We were all supporting Ted Cruz for president.
It was the Billy Bush thing came out.
That's what it was.
Yes, and you went on CNN.
David, I love your memory. You're so good at this. You know it better than I do, and I was living it. Okay, so that's right. So, my goodness. After the Billy Bush story broke, everybody said we're not. Yeah, there was a call. Paul Ryan was the Speaker of the House. Paul Ryan said, "Look, I'm going to." He called every member of Congress. It was a conference call.
He bailed on a Trump thing in Wisconsin, and Trump was secretly trying to win Wisconsin.
Paul Ryan said, "Look, everybody needs to do what they need to do to win their own races, and do what you got to do to win your own race." That was the message. And then the next day, like 25 Republicans unendorsed Trump.
Yeah.
And I had not yet even endorsed him.
Right.
And I was like, this is crazy. So I sent a tweet. And remember, I voted against John Boehner. I did not want to talk politics and all this, but I had voted against John Boehner. And then I sent a tweet and I said, look, if I said something like the Supreme Court is too important. If Paul Ryan is not for Donald Trump, then I'm not for Paul Ryan.
That's right.
And so then it created this big hoopla about, is Paul Ryan in jeopardy like John Boehner was in jeopardy? And for the next 3 days, maybe more, not a single Republican was going on TV to advocate for President Trump. But I got called. It was all these liberal networks. It was CNN, MSNBC, and they would call and be like, "Hey, do you want to go on?" Because anytime Republicans are fighting, they love it. I was like, "Sure, I'll go on," and I would go on and I'd say, "Look, Donald Trump told us who he's going to put on the Supreme Court.
Yes,
that's what and I believe him." And I said, "That's what matters to me." And I said, "I don't care what he said 11 years ago in a hot mic situation. What I care about is who he's going to put on the Supreme Court, because that will change the direction of our country."
You provided a clarity when we needed clarity, and you broke it into simple terms.
And
it was priceless.
For the next 3 days, I was on every network, and I'm not a guy that was ever on TV.
Yeah, you didn't. Yeah,
but I did it because I thought it was the right thing to do. I sent the tweet. The tweet triggered it, and I was on TV defending President Trump. And then that weekend, I was at a swim meet in Bartlesville for my daughter, and I got a call, and it was I think it was a 202 area code, and it said New York, and I'm at Rib Crib eating some barbecue between prelims and finals at a meet up in Bartlesville. I'm at Rib Crib, and phone rings. He's like, "Hey, is this Jim?" I'm like, "Yes." He's like, "Hey, this is Donald Trump," and I thought it was a prank call.
Oh God!
I'm like, okay, and he goes, "Hey, I just want to thank you for sticking with me," and then I started believing that maybe this was real, and he said, "I want to thank you for sticking with me," and I said something to the effect, "Well, sir, I'm really not sticking with you." I was like, "This is about the Supreme Court," and he's like, "That's right." He was like, "And if everybody understood that, we'd win this thing already."
Well, and you said you were a Cruz guy. I'm recounting what you told Pat Campbell about it and he said, "Yeah, and you're the reason I didn't win Oklahoma."
He knew that, didn't
he?
Yes, yeah. That's true. When we were supporting Ted Cruz won 3 counties. They were all the first district of Oklahoma, which was my district. Every other county, Ted Cruz lost. But we won those 3 counties so big that it carried the whole state.
Yeah.
And so, at the end of the day, I just told him, "Look, this is about the Supreme Court, and we need you to win because we have to have that Supreme Court switch."
Yeah.
And he was in full agreement, and he said, and he was like, "Anything else I should know?" I said a couple of. He asked me. He said, "Do you think this Anthony Weiner thing is going to matter?" Because remember that they were FBI was investigating Anthony Weiner's laptop.
That's right. That led to a Hillary investigation.
Yeah, and Hillary's emails were on there that were missing. And he's like, "Do you think this is going to matter?" I said, "Sir, I think it's going to matter big time. Every time you mention Hillary, you need to mention Anthony Weiner in the same sentence." And anyway, so there was that. And then I also told him, space matters. Florida, there's a whole lot of folks at the Space Coast. They're not necessarily Republican or Democrat, but they want to see us do stunning things in space, both on the national security side and on the civil side. I said, if you get those folks activated, Obama lost them. I mean, they were gone because he just basically, NASA was in a really hard spot after President Obama. And so those were my words to him. And that was kind of it.
Well, you had, I think it was that same campaign. You really did one big rally down here at Renaissance Hotel, and a bunch of the guys from the Freedom Caucus.
Yeah,
were there.
That's right.
And one of them became chief of staff.
Yep.
Mark
Meadows.
Mark Meadows.
Good friend,
and
yeah.
I remember I got to visit Mark that night, and I think Vice President Vance, I don't know if he was there at that time.
Pence.
I'm sorry.
He was not.
Yeah.
He was the governor of Indiana.
But you and Pence go way back to the first month you were in.
Well, I had met him. I wouldn't. He probably wouldn't remember me, but at least not in those days. But I had met him. He was just a very genuine human being. Very just a I mean, I really enjoyed knowing him, and I credit him a lot with any success I had at NASA. I mean, he was very involved and supportive, and he cared deeply about space. He was the chairman of the National Space Council, and he worked diligently to make sure that the Space Force got stood up, which of course was President Trump's agenda, and I have high regard for him for sure.
You have a high regard for James Lankford because of how hard he worked to get you in NASA. Right?
He did. Lankford was a great help. I coming out of the House of Representatives as a Freedom Caucus conservative, going to NASA from that position is not normal. And of course the Democrats were all against me because of that. And then I also had some issues with Flake and McCain, and I had to work to get them to vote. McCain ultimately never came back from his cancer, and Jeff Flake eventually turned the corner largely because of the influence of Vice President Pence. But we got confirmed Republican only. And Lankford was a huge advocate in all of that for me to get confirmed, and worked all the right senators to help me get it done. And I am forever grateful for him for doing
Absolutely.
Jim, let's get to what you're doing now.
Yep.
So what are you involved in currently?
So when I came back from NASA, I started doing a lot of different boards of directors and things like that, and then got involved in private equity a little bit, making investments. I didn't have a lot of money of my own, so I wasn't making my own investments, but helping a private equity firm make investments and do that kind of thing, especially on the space side of things. Over time, I recognized that I can add a lot of value to space companies as a consultant,
No doubt.
making the right connections, finding the right technologies that are going to make a difference, and then getting them connected to the right companies. So it was a lot of business development kind of work, a lot of strategic advisory kind of work, and some kind of investment direction kind of advocacy, that kind of thing. And then, President Trump got reelected, and a whole lot of space companies started calling saying, hey, what's the future going to hold? What's it going to look like? And then, of course, the proximity with Elon Musk indicated that there's going to be a very strong future that includes a robust space policy going forward. In many ways, that's fantastic. In other ways, it had space companies concerned. Is there going to be any room for us kind of deal? And, of course, I've always believed it's important to have multiple providers competing on cost and innovation, as we discussed earlier. And I said, look, if we do it right, there's this economy for space is going to be big enough for everybody, and we need to start letting people know what's at stake and how to win, because this is going to be critically important for national security and for the economy of the United States in the future. And for the first time, I no kidding, registered as a lobbyist, because if I'm going to be having those conversations at that level with people in the administration, I need to make sure that I'm doing it on the up and up. Sure. And so I did. So when Trump won the election, I registered and we moved forward.
So the company you work for now?
It's called the Artemis Group, and it's all folks that are in the space world that grew up with me in the space world. Quite frankly, Gabe Sherman was my district director in the House of Representatives. Yes,
brilliant man.
He is indeed.
Yep.
And I took him to NASA with me. He was my chief of staff at NASA. Matt Ryden did my communications in Congress, and he became yeah, that's right. So Matt became my press secretary at NASA. And then a couple of others that I knew from the House of Representatives that worked on the science committee and other space related activities in the House. And we just started working together to basically do the right things, convince the right people how to do the right things in space for the best interests of our country.
Yeah. When we met about a month ago, I talked about this morning. What is it, BWXT?
Yes, it's a nuclear company. Yep.
A nuclear company, right. And why don't you tell our audience what they're doing here in Tulsa?
Oh, I don't think it's different. BWXT is not. You're thinking probably of a different company called Agile Space. But either way, it's all about space propulsion.
One down at the airport.
Yeah, that's Agile.
Okay,
not
tell
BWXT.
us about that one. I'm sorry, I got it mixed up.
So BWXT is a nuclear power company,
Right?
And they, for aircraft carriers, they build like our power plants on aircraft carriers. I've been a long advocate that we need nuclear power in space. I'm not advocating that we need nuclear weapons in space, but we do need nuclear power in space. The reason we need it, if we're going to live long term on the moon, we need lots of power on the moon. And again, it's all about mass. How do you reduce the mass and increase the amount of power?
Miniaturizing it,
Yes,
right?
that's right.
Yeah.
So when I was at NASA, we had a program called Kilopower, and it was about developing a modular nuclear reactor that we could put on the surface of the moon and ultimately be able to sustain, like, we're going to the moon to stay. That's the intent. How do we sustain life on the moon? We're going to need power. We're going to need to use the resources of the moon for life support, and we need power in order to do that. We need to crack the water ice on the moon, which is very prevalent, crack the water ice into hydrogen, which is power, and oxygen, which is, of course, air to breathe. But we also need H2O, which is water to drink. So there's resources on the moon. We need to take the regolith on the moon. We need to extract, there's been so much talk about Greenland, so much talk about Ukraine, precious metals, rare earth metals. These are not earth metals at all. These are asteroid impacts from billions of years ago.
Gotcha.
And on the moon, unlike the Earth, the moon doesn't have an active geology. So on the Earth, anything that impacted the moon or impacted the Earth billions of years ago, it isn't today where it was. First of all, it all gets burned up in the atmosphere when it enters the atmosphere. If it doesn't get burned up and it actually makes an impact, then the geology eats it up over time, and it's not today where it was. And when you find it, it's in very trace amounts. The moon has no active geology, and it has no atmosphere. The moon is being pelted all the time. The Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter, which is an orbiter we have going around the moon looking at it, is giving us information. When it flies over the same spot of the moon twice, it looks different every time because it's always being pelted with micrometeoroids. So my point is this. Rare earth metals not being earth metals at all, platinum group metals, like there are trace amounts here on Earth. They could be in massive deposits on the moon. But there's a lot of other valuable resources on the moon as well. Helium-3 is tremendously valuable for nuclear fusion. And I know we haven't accomplished nuclear fusion yet, but we will, and it will happen. And if you can do nuclear fusion with helium-3, there is no nuclear waste. There's no carbon emissions, of course. And you can take a bottle this size of helium-3 and you can power the city of Houston for an entire year.
12-ounce bottle.
And helium-3 is all over the surface of the moon. Know this. China is not going to the moon to collect rocks for science. Like, they're going to the moon for a purpose. And there's a lot of reasons we can get into on the national security front, but there's also a lot of reasons on the economic front, which, by the way, is national security. The challenge we have in America is we're so distracted with all kinds of other stuff that have nothing to do with national security. And we've got to get the right people smart on what China is doing and what we need to be doing and how we're going to compete. Because who goes to the moon first and what rules get established, all of that really matters. And we need to be there. We need to have a presence, and we've got to lead. Because if we don't, somebody else will, and it might not be good for us.
Okay, that's BWXT. But then,
I'm sorry, that's nuclear power. Going back to Agile, which is your question. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So Agile, to defend in space. Remember, China is building anti-satellite missiles, co-orbital anti-satellite satellites. They've got other technologies, jamming, hacking, spoofing, dazzling, using light energy or directed energy to confuse satellites. There's all these proliferating technologies out there that are damaging to our space capabilities, which are critically important, not just for our security, but for our way of life. And so as these technologies are proliferating, we have to defend against it. How do we do that? Well, we need to proliferate. We need, instead of building dozens of satellites that are multi-billion dollars, we need to build thousands of satellites, and they need to be $5 million. Is that funny?
it is, because I'm just seeing this whole belt of satellites around the Earth.
Yeah.
Like we're going to be enclosed. You won't be able to go into space anymore because you can run through a bunch of satellites.
Just make sure the space is really big, Eddie. I mean, it's big.
Yeah.
So, I know, but around the Earth, it's smaller. That's what I'm saying.
There's challenges there for sure.
There is space junk, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of space junk, and it is.
And when you're talking about thousands of satellites, I'm thinking of lots of space.
We're talking about hundreds of thousands of satellites over time here.
Oh, yeah.
And by the way, this is just our country. Like, we're not even talking about what China and Russia and Europe and Japan. Okay. But real quick, let me get to the point.
Jaja.
The reason we're building thousands of satellites and we're putting them in different orbits, we're complicating the targeting solution for the enemy. That's the purpose of that. Mm-hmm. Complicating the targeting solution is one element of resilience. A second element of resilience is being unpredictable and maneuverable. Mm-hmm. And so we've got to make sure that our satellites can maneuver. And so I have believed, and I still do, that how we move in space, what we do today is not how we're going to do it in the future, and it's got to change. So we need lots of different types of propulsion: electric propulsion, chemical propulsion, and going to BWXT, nuclear propulsion. We need all these different types of propulsion in space so that we can have the resilience that our country needs. Now, in order to achieve that, we've got to be able to test those types of propulsion capabilities. So what we've done is we've worked with the state of Oklahoma, the Department of Commerce, and a company called Agile Space. They build thrusters for satellites in space. And we're going to build a test facility. We call it hypergolic test facility, meaning it's a type of chemical propulsion. We're going to put it at Tulsa International Airport. For people who are listening or worried about it, these thrusters are going to be tested in what's called a thermal vacuum chamber. It's in a vacuum. Space is a vacuum. There's no pressure.
Sure.
So when you do it in a vacuum, it doesn't make noise. So the noise is not going to there will be noise, but it's not going to be like a rocket or even a jet.
It's true. I've seen it.
Quiet.
Yeah.
So I guess my point is we're going to do this testing in Tulsa. This is going to be a magnet for all kinds of space companies to come to Tulsa. And when they come here, they're going to see what a great city this is. And we want to develop it. We want to look, here in Tulsa, our brilliant oil companies in the 1920s, they saw a market for aviation.
Yeah.
And they invested in it.
Yeah. Getty.
Yes. John Paul Getty, the Waite and Frank Phillips.
Yeah. Spartan Aeronautics was started by Getty.
That's right.
Yeah.
There's others. W.G. Skelly. They invested heavily in aviation because they wanted to sell more oil. And because of that, today in Tulsa, we've got the American Airlines maintenance base. We've got Spirit Aerosystems. We've got all these industries in the aerospace sector. My point is this. If we do things right in the 2020s, the way they did in the 1920s, 100 years from now, people are going to be saying, look at how smart they were. Didn't they do the right things? They knew space was going to be a thing. Nobody else was considering it. But the city of Tulsa, the state of Oklahoma stepped up and made a huge difference, not just for our communities, but also for the state and for the nation.
Before you started Artemis here after Trump got elected, right? That's kind of when you full launched in it. You were generally said you're working aerospace consulting and stuff. I do want to talk about something here. You and I have a lot of libertarian friends. A lot of them helped you get elected, right? In that they really have this anti-industrial military complex thing. There is a purpose for it, but there's also a very strong purpose for peace.
That's right.
Because, you got to maintain strength. But imagine if we could divert more of that money that we're putting into replacing our bombs that we keep using up and put it into some of this research that you say is essential to leading the next century. But I noticed something that's happened here during the Ukraine-Russia war. They have stepped forward leaps and bounds on drones as a weapon. I don't know how much of that you followed. You're kind of focused on outer space. But I'm realizing this. Wait a minute. We could be behind in technology in drones, which are going to play a significant role if we do have to go to a major war.
Yeah, we're not. I don't think we're going to be behind in drones. I mean, we've been the world leader there for a very long time, and I think we're going to continue to be. But I would also say, going back to the libertarian kind of elements of the Republican Party, of which I have deep empathy, my concern has been and always will be that we way overspend as a country. I mean, way overspend. And, I voted against omnibus spending packages. And
I remember
resolutions.
you took heat.
I did. A lot of heat. But I will also tell you that the challenges that we have on spending are not on the things that like national security and defense. And I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
People often quote the fact that when we landed on the moon all those times in the Apollo era, we were spending 5% of America's budget on NASA at the time.
Wow.
5%. Now we're less than 1/3 of 1%. So
now I know what Larry Norman was talking about, the famous Christian song. You say we beat the Russians to the moon, but I say you starve your children to do it.
well, I would also argue.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird to think about, but a lot of the technologies that we use today were born from that program way back then.
Thank you.
The miniaturization of electronics, the computing power that we needed, all that stuff was in its infancy, and a lot of it was government funded.
Yeah.
And a lot of it was government funded through NASA. I hear a lot about Tang. I hear about Velcro. These are things from
our
the
computers before that were vacuum tubes.
That's right.
Yeah.
So, but the Mars rover, the first Mars rovers had cameras that Nokia licensed in 1998. Nokia to put in the first cell phones, and now everybody has basically a Mars rover camera in their cell phones. Wow. So now it's not they've advanced since 1998. Make no mistake. However, you get my point. The spin-off technologies and how it's advanced humankind is remarkable. Yeah. And there's so much more to talk about on all that.
Right.
However, going back to your question, it is not just that NASA is spending less money, and that's not why we're down at 1/3 of 1% or less compared to the Apollo era, where 5% of federal spending. A big change has been since the 1960s, the growth of Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, the creation of Obamacare, the entitlement programs.
Yeah.
Have grown exponentially.
Yep.
And the discretionary budget has been fairly constant. I'm not saying it's been constant, but it's been a lot less growth than the rest. So you're not going to balance the budget on this, less than, I think it's like 25% of federal spending is the discretionary budget. The mandatory budget, which is the entitlements, the other, 3/4 of the federal budget, that's still growing rapidly. So until you can deal with that, you're not going to balance. You can't balance the budget on the discretionary side of the ledger. It doesn't work.
Yep.
So to be clear, and by the way, there are in Congress, I saw it with my own eyes, there are folks that are absolutely, you would call them the defense hawks, or you would call them the neocons, if you will. Mm-hmm. And then you've got like the non-interventionists, and there's these elements. I don't put myself in either category, just to be clear. I believe that intervention is sometimes called for, and we've seen that in history going back to World War II. But I also believe that in many cases we get entangled in ways that we absolutely should not. And I don't think you have to be one or the other. You're not either a neocon or a non-interventionist. You can be something else.
Ted Cruz kind of talking to Tucker Carlson recently.
That's right.
I'm kind of a third wave here.
Yeah. No, that's right. There's more than one path, more than two paths, I should say. And quite frankly, I do think Ted, in many ways, he gets it right on this issue.
I think so.
I hate to be the guy that always brings it back to the same thing, agile. Because it's related to Tulsa and something that's actually happening that you brought to Tulsa and promises economic gain here in the city. So how far along are we? I mean, is the facility being built now? Is it in?
As of right now, the lease has been signed, and groundbreaking is probably going to be later this summer, and then it'll probably be about a year to a year and a half to actually build the hypergolic test facility. And then once it's operational, we're going to have companies coming to Tulsa to test their in-space propulsion thrusters.
Wow. And where is this located? Which area are they looking at building this?
So if you go to Tulsa International Airport and you
on
go
the north end,
it's actually kind of 31st and Mingo. On the other side of Mingo, so the west side of Mingo,
North 31st.
It might be 41st and Mingo.
Yeah,
no,
I
it's
think
31st.
it's
31st. Yeah, 31st and Mingo. On the west side, I'm sorry, the east side of Mingo and the north side of 31st. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's where the Air Guard is, isn't it? Close by.
Yeah,
It's not
American
far.
Airlines and the National Guard.
Yeah, and so when we talk about hypergolic fuels, the Air Guard, of course, makes the Air Guard has F-16s, and those F-16s have ejection seats, and those ejection seats use hydrazine, which is a hypergolic fuel. And that's the same type of fuel that we're going to be testing there at the hypergolic test facility.
And so, what is the advantage of the hypergolic fuels?
High energy. So if you want to get out of the way of a missile, or you're about
You
to,
wanna get out of the way? Oh,
or you're maybe you're about to collide with another satellite or something, you need to get out of the way. You need high energy. Now it's not efficient. It's not efficient at all. You're going to burn a lot of fuel, and it's going to. So the problem we have in space right now is you've got electric propulsion, which is super efficient, but it's like taking a breath of air. There's just not a lot of thrust there. And then you've got chemical propulsion, where there's a tremendous amount of thrust, but you burn it all in like one burn. So if you burn all your fuel and now you're a satellite that can't maneuver, you're pretty much a dead satellite. So you don't want to burn all your fuel with the chemical thrust, but the electric thrust isn't enough to maneuver. So really what we need is, one of the things I'm very focused on is what we call multimode. Can you use a chemical propellant like hydrazine to do electric propulsion? So you have to decompose the hydrazine into its component parts, atoms, and then you've got to strip off those electrons from those atoms to make the atoms positively charged and the electrons negatively charged. And so then you can use magnets to accelerate those subatomic charged particles out of your thruster.
Can you give us an illustration of how that's being done? Is there anything like it?
Yes. So we do electric propulsion, which means you're taking atoms. It's generally xenon or krypton, and you take those atoms and you strip off the electrons, and then you use magnetism to accelerate those subatomic charged particles. We do that today. But that's xenon or krypton, which is a different fuel than a chemical propellant like hydrazine. So like when I was at NASA, we did a mission OSIRIS-REx to an asteroid called Bennu. And we had an electric propulsion system for the really fine maneuvers that we need to do, and we have a chemical propulsion system to get out of Earth's atmosphere or get out of Earth's orbit and do all of the the big maneuvering that we need to do at the asteroid Bennu. But you have two separate systems. That means you have two separate fuel tanks, two separate fuel feed systems, two separate power processing units, two separate thrusters, everything. And remember, mass is everything when it comes to cost in space. So if you have to have this hybrid kind of capability, it's way more expensive, way less efficient than if you can do multi-mode, which says we're going to use one propellant, one fuel feed system, one power processing unit, and we're going to do it all in one. And with that system, we can do both chemical thrust for high energy or electric thrust for high efficiency. We can do both. That's called multi-mode. And Agile is working on that. And that's one of the reasons I want them to come to Tulsa, because they are going to be providing the types of thrust in the future that is going to be necessary for the country.
Wow, that's
more than you wanted to know. Your
No. I think this is excellent, because and what I'm excited about is the fact that it will put Tulsa, at the cutting edge of space travel, and
that's
and
what we're hoping
technology.
for.
For young people looking to see this opportunity, how do they prepare themselves scholastically?
So it's STEM fields are key. What a couple of things are important to note in the world right now, in the United States especially, we just don't have enough engineers. If you want a job and you're an engineer, you can pretty much count on it.
Well, that's why Apple said they couldn't build the iPhone here.
That's right.
We don't have the engineers.
That's a big challenge. So we need engineers for sure. In the space world, we need them more than ever. That's one piece. The other thing is we also need technicians. We need folks that might not have a 4-year degree, but might have a 2-year degree and are focused on, the aerospace sector. it's not that much different. If you're an A&P mechanic, and you know how to build to the standards necessary for aviation, which are super high standards, and the 1,000th part you make has to be exactly like the first part that you made. Like that type of standardization in aviation is very similar to the standardization for manufacturing in space. And so we have that here in Oklahoma and in Tulsa in spades. So on that piece, and that's quite frankly the brilliance of Tulsa Tech and these tech colleges. You mentioned Spartan College of Aeronautics. We are in Oklahoma. We're really good there.
Okay.
Where we lack is the high end engineers. But we're gonna continue to solve that problem.
What schools here in Oklahoma do you think have the engineering component?
Yeah.
Would you say OU is there?
So pretty much all of the 4-year colleges, OU, OSU, ORU.
Yeah, they have an engineering. They're a tough one at ORU.
Yeah, TU. They're more focused on petroleum and chemical, but still, I mean, those. Look, when you're talking about stripping subatomic charged particles off of an atom, that's chemical engineering, right? Yeah. So, chemical engineers coming out of TU that are focused maybe on petroleum, it works in many cases. It works for this type of stuff. So,
man.
I think we've held them long enough.
Man. Yeah. Oh no, I could take more. I love this.
Have me on again.
I definitely we definitely want to, because this is good stuff.
What time do you hope to be operational?
What's that for
this facility in
Agile?
I would say look for it to be operational probably 18 months from now. Okay. But if we could go faster, we will. But either way, we've already got customers lined up for the facility. It's going to be in great demand.
So now, are you working directly with Agile, or are you? Oh, so this is what you're doing now.
Both, yeah. Both. So we're working with the state of Oklahoma, the Department of Commerce, and then Agile Space Industries is the name of the company, and then the airport authority. We're trying to bring everybody together, get them working on the same things, and get it done.
And the ticker symbol?
Yeah. Well, it's privately held right now. So.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. When some of your clients come in, we'd love to talk to them if you could bring them in here.
Yeah.
And then as you come back, report in on how it's going or anything else newsworthy.
I'm telling you. So there's another big thing happening down in Southwest Oklahoma. There's a company called Dawn Aerospace, DAWN Aerospace. It's from New Zealand. And the state of Oklahoma stepped up to be a partner with them in building a space plane. So
Is that what, Duncan or Lawton?
It's Burns Flat, Oklahoma. Sure. So it's down near Clinton, Oklahoma.
Sure. Very familiar.
We have a spaceport there. A lot of people don't realize
really?
it.
Really? A spaceport?
It's a strategic air command base that goes all the way back to the 1950s. It's built for B-52s, but it's a massive piece of concrete, a long runway.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, yeah.
I was not aware of that. I worked a wheat harvest out there outside of Clinton back in my youth.
So it's way out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, it is.
And we have a license from the FAA to do suborbital space from that facility, which means if we can get a company to come to Oklahoma and launch from there, they can do it. So Dawn Aerospace is building. It's a UAV. It's an unmanned vehicle, but it's 16 feet long. So this thing is not small. 16 feet long, and it takes off horizontally. It goes vertical with rocket engines, and it will give you 2 to 5 minutes of weightlessness, which has a whole host of research capabilities for the national security interests of the country, but also for pharmaceuticals, regenerative medicine, a lot of other things are going to be tested there. Look, the cost of getting to orbit is super high.
Yeah.
So anything you can test in 2 to 5 minutes of microgravity or zero gravity is tremendously valuable, and it's a lot less expensive. So this vehicle is going to fly to space potentially up to 150 times a year. Oklahoma could have the busiest spaceport in America.
Wow.
If we do this right. So
I'm excited.
So this is a winged aircraft?
It's a winged aircraft. Think of it as a rocket-powered glider.
Yeah.
That's what, yeah.
A rocket powered
that goes to
glider.
space. A rocket
And
powered
That goes
glider.
to space.
What's it is now? Elon's using basically natural gas for most of his rockets, right?
Yeah, depending on which one, but like the Falcon rocket is liquid oxygen and kerosene. Rocket propellant 1 is what we call it, and then the Starship is methane. So
Yeah.
natural gas.
Well, I'm telling you, Clinton is on top of a huge natural gas reserve.
Yeah,
there.
sure.
Yeah, they're just, when I was out there, you could hear booms from every time they hit another pocket.
Is that right?
Yeah, back in the early 80s, it was crazy. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Jim, hey, thanks so much for that. And seriously, we definitely will have you back. And if you have any new news on
Yeah,
Agile or any of the other companies,
absolutely.
please let us know. So,
Love
hey, we're going to take a short break, and when we get back, we'll continue. All right. Oh, how funny. All right. Sorry, I understand we lost our video feed for a while. But anyway, we are back, or black, if you want to want to call it that. Hey, yeah, Dave. Dave was just telling me how incredibly exciting and just, I don't know, knowledge giving that was that hour with Jim Bridenstine. I mean, it's got me excited. There's so many things going on that I had no clue. And I'm sure most of you, if any of you knew everything that's going on in the area of space and technology. And what's really exciting is that because of his background now, he can bring a lot of this to Oklahoma. And to Tulsa in particular. The only thing that bothers me is I think the wrong mayor may get credit for it. Sorry, Monroe, but you're not feeding the palate as we would like.
You know what? The best news I got out of it
What is that?
is we actually went to the moon.
Oh,
Sorry, Joe Rogan, but no, he answered the one thing that bothered me that I didn't totally understand was the Van Allen radiation belt.
right. That's just a rehash. A lot of people feel that we've not really been to the moon before because of the Van Allen radiation belt, that it is actually what has been preventing any basically living thing from going through it. And
Yeah.
but he put that to rest with his explanation.
Yeah, he said you just go through it really fast.
Yeah.
And I like how he likened it. Like I was at the dentist this week and they did x-rays. And the lady, when she gets ready to do it, goes behind this wall that has lead in it. And then she's also wearing this lead apron, this heavy apron,
And
right?
they put a lead apron on you.
Well, they don't do that anymore. The radiation's so low, they don't put the aprons on.
But she's still going behind the wall.
Yeah. The difference is I'm not taking x-rays 8 hours a day, 5 days a week.
Right.
She is.
Yeah.
She's living in
I
that
see what you're saying.
environment, so
Yeah.
she's got a greater danger.
Right.
Thus, more prevention is warranted.
A
For
recent
somebody that gets an x-ray once every 3 or 4 years.
right. A recent dentist I had, they were using like a smaller X-ray gun,
Yeah.
and they walk around with it. But after 4 X-rays, I said, "Nah, that's enough." But I haven't. Yeah, no, yes, you have. You finished. Do not put that thing in my face again, or I will shove it up your butt. But, I mean, sometimes you have to just speak to him like a man, you know. but I mean, these young girls just wanted to take all, you know. And then the insurance companies are only going to pay for 2 anyway. So then you know. So no, if you didn't get it with that, I'm sorry, it's on you. But anyway, yeah. But no, you're right. That explains something. But it's funny that's the biggest thing you got out of it, the best thing you got out of it.
No, I say that more as a joke, but it was, you brought up the subject, you know, did we really go to the moon?
Yeah.
And because there are a lot of, I know that there's man-made stuff that we put up there.
Right.
The only question is left is, did humans go up there as well?
Right.
And and that's why the Van Allen thing, that only affects humans, doesn't affect the hardware.
Right.
So
Right.
anyway, yeah.
Yeah. So the thing that got me, I wasn't aware that China has still been going to the moon and sending things to the moon. I wasn't aware of that. Were you aware of that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, that I heard of one. They landed. They chose the other
Right,
side
but he
of the
made it
landing.
sound like they were a lot farther ahead in their moon launchings and travel than I ever thought.
Yeah.
And I'm surprised. Now, Russia, I could have, but when he says China has been to the moon, what, 5 times or however
Yeah,
many
I
times?
wanted to ask him about Russia actually went to Venus a couple of times.
Are you
Their
serious?
spacecraft lasted 45 seconds. It got burnt up both times.
Trying to enter the atmosphere.
No, actually landing, but it was 900-degree heat they were landing in.
Oh.
And so they actually had some communication they were able to get for less than a minute. It burnt up, but it was still...
Is there a dark side of Venus?
I don't know. But it was still a huge accomplishment. We didn't find out about it because they kept it secret.
Yeah, you know what's funny about that is, as you were saying that, I was thinking Venus, how is it? And then I remember Mercury, Venus, Earth. So they are that much closer to the sun than we are.
Yeah.
And that's why, it would be that much
you
hotter.
see, you and I read C.S. Lewis Paralandra, and we just get this image.
Journey
it
to
ain't
Venus,
like that.
Journey to Mars, right.
But I have to say that about,
so Mars is a lot. Yeah, the problem, it's an opposite problem with Mars because Mars, it's a cold situation versus the heat.
A lot colder than C.S. Lewis.
Well, according to Lewis, we did fine on both planets.
It was a fun book series to read.
Great. I mean, it wasn't really about space travel to Mars or Venus. He just used those, but those are 3 with that hideous strength, the last one. But between those 3 books, to me, some of the greatest work that Lewis ever did. Yeah. I mean, it's amazing. Yeah. The 2 deal with how the devil is and so forth. And then how creation, if you, well, let me just tell you. So, Journey to Venus is the one, or Paralandra is the original name, Paralandra, but basically, Okay. Mars was the first one.
Well, that was first called Out of the Silent Planet.
Out of the Silent Planet, but that was Mars, and then Paralandra was the Journey to Venus.
Yeah,
they've renamed both.
Oh, gotcha.
They've renamed the books. Yeah. So, but anyway, it deals with. Another Earth, basically, a creation with Adam and Eve on that planet, Paralandra. And this guy, Ransom, the main character, he ends up going there and he confronts Satan. And Satan is trying to tempt the Eve of Venus and get her to sin, to create the same fall as man on Earth, but mankind on Earth. But still today, what I'm amazed at is how C.S. Lewis was able to depict how the devil, that conversation between it is just the freakiest thing. You just sit there and it just,
Right. And then it gets even more when you go to the Screw Tape Letters.
Right.
How the devil thinks, how he corrupts.
Right. But as far as that one, it's a little easier because Screw Tape is a little, it gets more theological and more into that. But this puts it in a real sense.
Imagine if Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden had some character like Ransom to answer the lies of the deceiver.
Right, exactly, and keep Eve from eating the apple and so forth. And the thing I always like to harp on, not harp on, but bring out. A lot of people misread, or it's been not translated but passed on mistakenly. So, like, do you know why Eve? What did Eve say to the snake?
Oh, yeah, so we weren't supposed to touch it.
Exactly. That's what we've talked about that before. Most of us think about Eve eating the apple. And yes, she got Adam to then eat the apple. But when Satan asks Eve, what did God say? And she says, he told us not to touch the tree. Not to touch the tree.
And she had to take Adam's word for it.
Exactly. And so I've always I came to the conclusion then once I read that, it was like a bing, light went on. And I'll tell you where it came to me. I was in Uganda speaking to kids, and they're like the Baptist teachings or more Baptist philosophy. You can't dance, you can't drink, you can't do this, you can't do that. And then to me, the sin is not in the dancing. The sin is not in the drinking. In the drinking, it's getting drunk. The Bible doesn't say do not drink. It says do not be drunk with wine.
Yep.
It does not say don't dance. It says don't lust. And so what I realized, and it popped up when I was reading there in Genesis, that what Adam did, he told her, don't touch that fruit, because he felt he put an extra layer between, an extra step between actual sin and not sin.
It was well-intentioned, though,
It was well-intentioned, exactly. And so we do the same thing.
Yes.
But what happens, it actually has a reverse effect, because as soon as you touch it, well, I've already sinned, I might as well eat it. And so in dancing, you know, well, I've danced now, it's sin, I might as well go ahead and have sex. I've drunk this wine, I might as well go ahead and get drunk. I don't know if that makes sense to anybody, but if you really think about it and plan it out, that's what ends up happening. And we can do that with our children. That's why we have to be careful with our children not to put intermediate steps into the things we don't want them to do. Because what will happen, they will misstep on one of those steps that you put in between their sin against you. And then once they've done that, I've already done that, I might as well go ahead.
I had a great pastor, doctorate of theology, Dr. Dan Beller, was at Evangelistic Temple for decades. He said, we criticize these liberal churches for taking away from Scripture. Problem is, we more fundamentalists and evangelical tend to add to.
Eisegesis instead.
Yes, right. And Paul told Timothy, preach the things that become sound doctrine.
Right.
Because by adding to it, you're just making things of man as important as God's words. Jesus said, my words are spirit and they're life. And when you add to it, and this is why the beauty, again, back to C.S. Lewis, writing his best work is Mere Christianity. Simple, without all the extra stuff.
Right.
And all the denominational stuff.
Yeah. No, it's exactly right. And so we have to, that's why Martin Luther had a term called sola scriptura, means the scripture alone, only the scripture. Don't throw other stuff in it. Don't try to, make up your new rules, your own rules, your extra rules, or anything like that. Stick with what God said and live with that.
Yep.
And it's hard enough. That's hard enough for you to not throw a bunch of other stuff in there.
Yes.
It's just crazy.
You see, the only thing that can take us from space research to this topic is someone like Jim Bridenstine and C.S. Lewis.
Yes. Yeah, we've been able to merge the two.
There you go.
He led us into the space trilogy. But no, seriously, if you get a chance, order it on Amazon. It's called the C.S. Lewis Space Trilogy.
Yeah.
There are 3 books: Out of the Silent Planet, Journey to Venus, and That Hideous Strength, which is, to me, it's a prophetic book. We've talked about that before.
It's an end times book.
It's an end times book, and it's prophetic. And
but it's England centric.
How did he? Yeah, but what gets me is the way he was so able to predict where we would be today with education, teachers, and it's crazy. It's literally crazy.
Yeah, it's interesting. He shows that the educated are more easily duped than the more simple-minded.
Yeah.
The folks with common sense and rely on common sense rather than people that rely on their high intellectual attainment.
Right. And even what they were teaching is the thing, that he gets into, and how they're basically leading these people or children, particularly in this community, astray and teach. It's almost, it was a precursor to, what is the name of it? This Present Darkness.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
yes, by Frank Peretti.
Frank Peretti's book.
That came out in the early 80s, I think.
Yeah.
And then
you're
Piercing the Darkness becoming the sequel to it.
Right.
Yeah, great,
Right.
great books.
Exactly.
I was my daughter's an author my niece is a author for Bethany House, and she was doing some big thing on Christian rights, some big convention, and she runs into Frank Peretti, and she says, I just want you to know, you just traumatized my childhood. And Frank's, I'm sorry. He says, when I read Piercing this present darkness, I couldn't sleep for a week.
You know, it's funny. I met him after he wrote the book.
Mm-hmm.
This was in Dallas. They had a Christian booksellers, CBA, and convention, and I'm there, and they were giving away the book.
Yeah,
you know,
wow.
and, they had like stacks of the book, but nobody knew who this guy was.
Wow.
And he's there, and he actually looks like a kind of like a hippie. He's from Oregon. It was from Oregon, and he's just a scruffy looking little hippie looking guy, and very interesting, but very nice. But anyway, I think I left with like 10 copies of this book, and I was giving them to people. You know, I had my book, but
you've got one of his books right below you there. One of them. It's a different type.
I probably do.
You got a Frank Peretti book.
Yeah,
He's written so many now.
Yeah. Before him was Steve Lawhead, was the guy who I think he might have been on Bethany, but anyway, Peretti. He is an amazing. Right, he's kind of a C.S. Lewis type of thinker, that he can take spiritual truths and put them into allegory or into story and flesh them out. You know, he's written numerous books since then. There's a new one, a new guy, Christian author. I cannot think of his name right now, but he's similar. He's a best-selling author, Christian author. Do you know any other contemporary? Does anybody come to your mind? I cannot think of his name right now, but I read all of his probably first 10 books, and then after a while, I mean, he would put a new. I don't know how these people do it. I don't know how they do it, because he would have a new book every 6 months. Yeah. You know, and you read these things, and they're so detailed and intricate, and they all follow and have characters and new characters, and then here comes a new one and a new one and a new one. Because his books, they all were at a different period, but they always came back to like in one. People travel back in history. You find a guy in New York, and next thing you know, he's back in the 13th century or something. Yeah. And then you know, you got a futuristic one, and it goes back. It always relates back to the same thing. You know. So, but I cannot think of his name. Darn it! I'm sorry to even mention it to you. Okay, let's move on, Dave. How about some news? The bombing, the big thing I'm seeing right now is the second guessing on the damage we did to Iran's nuclear facilities. Yeah, that was a thing early in the week. No, it's still. I went on this morning, and there's still. I think they just beat that horse out for all they're gonna. They're trying. They're gonna keep on trying and trying and trying, and I think what adds to it is that Trump and then Pete Hegseth and others have come out doubling down on the damage we've done to the nuclear program. But then there's some like the Nuclear Energy Commission or some one of these groups saying, well, we don't think he really took out their nuclear. I mean, and they would know this how? Exactly. There's no. It's just speculation. It's total speculation. Because even the report that started it all was classified as a low confidence. It was a speculation. Right. You know, from satellite imagery. Right. I mean, my goodness. But Pete
is going after him.
Yeah.
He turned on, what's her name? One of the Fox News reporters.
Probably the blonde.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She used to be their Jerusalem correspondent, but he called her out before the election, or right after post-election, said she's one of the most liberal people at Fox.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, she's bad. She's bad news.
And so when Pete was at the White House this week with Trump doing a press conference, she asked a question of him, and he just says, and you are probably the worst. And I remember she did this
with CSA and MSNBC.
You know, like
CNN and
no, this was the Fox News.
No, I'm saying to say she's the worst.
Yeah,
is
that's pretty low.
Yeah, that's very low. But no, you're right, and it is interesting that Fox is one of the ones that keeps second guessing and questioning the efficacy of this the attack on the nuclear facilities. So it's. I don't know. I don't know what the deal is with these people.
Jennifer Griffin, I think is her name.
Oh, yeah. She's got real short hair. She
used to have long hair.
Yeah, she left for a while.
She had cancer.
But she went to CBS for a while.
Probably.
And
Griffin.
Right.
Griffin.
And then they fired her from CBS to bring her, and Fox picked her up again. And now she's, So, it's bad.
So, So to me, that's just not much of a story. I think, you know what?
Which is not much of a story.
Well, here's the deal. I think
the whole attack is not much of a story.
No, they're acting like Trump oversold this as though there will never be a threat again. And we all know that's not true.
No, even they
and Trump didn't say that it's true, but they're trying to put those words in his mouth. And it is true. You will always have to be vigilant.
Yeah, well, but here's the deal. They're trying to make it sound like they can rebuild it within weeks. Are you serious? I mean, and in some months, but it'll be years. I mean, just think about it. Think of everything that it takes. First, they had to hollow out this underground bunker. Put in all of it's like building a home and then furnishing it, to make it livable. Okay, with a nuclear facility, the time, effort, and money it takes to do something on that scale is just, let's put it this way, it's far-reaching, it's hard to get there. They're making it sound, they're just going to, look, trucks. Somebody has a satellite picture of trucks lined up or something on the site. Like, they've loaded up their entire nuclear program into these 7 trucks, and they're going to move it 100 miles, and they're going to dig a new hole and set up or in a tent, and it's going to be back to business as new.
But we can't tell whether they were loading or unloading, because it's very probable and very plausible that you'd want to put all your stuff in the most secure location you got, the one that they can't touch, or so they thought.
Right. But just in general, when you look at everything now, first there's a crater and there's some holes in the crater. Yeah. And if you actually go and listen to the people who dropped the bombs and those who know, the first bomb goes in, creates a hole, and the second one comes in right on top of that to break through that hole even deeper.
Except at Fordo, we didn't stop at 2. We dropped 6.
Yeah.
So, but here's the thing. That mountain will never be safe to dig into again. Never. Yeah. It is shattered to pieces. It is a pile of rubble.
Yeah.
It is not solid rock anymore.
And what Pete Hegseth is saying, that your aerial surveillance cannot even see the damage down below, because most of the damage is where the second bomb went through, or missile, whatever, air to ground, went through that first hole.
Right.
And it exploded underground.
Right.
So we have no idea. The people who are trying to, nothing happened.
You got 1 million pounds of dirt fell into it.
Right.
So you're not going to see it.
No, you're not going to see it.
But here's the other thing. You just lost your top, 10 nuclear scientists. You're cleaning out their apartment, all of that. There's going to be top secret information. First thing you're going to want to do is get all that data, all the computer laptops, every CD disk, whatever, and get it to a safe place. To me, that's a plausible scenario for why trucks may be bringing things in prior to the bombing.
I doubt they were bringing anything in because they knew that we were coming. It was just a question of when are we coming.
What do you do with all the computers, the disks, all the data that these scientists have at their homes or at other offices they work?
Yeah, but I wouldn't bring it to a facility that's about to be destroyed. I would take it somewhere else.
What is safer?
What is safer?
What's safer than that place? I mean, to me, that was the thing they had the most confidence in.
Well, if that's the case, then yeah, I go with your reasoning. But I don't think if it was me and we've been saying we're going to destroy your nuclear facility, mm-hmm. I'm not going to take everything that's needed to run that facility and put it into the facility. Yeah. I'm going to find another place, mm-hmm. It'd be like somebody saying we're going to come rob Fort Knox. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to take more gold and put it into Fort Knox.
I am.
I take it out. But so that's just how I'm
Here's the thing. The paranoia is so deep, so thick right now.
With the media?
No, I'm talking about amongst the Iranians mm-hmm. because of how penetrated they were by the Mossad, the secret agents.
The only thing that bothers me is you have thousands of Iranians that would give anything to be delivered from the Ayatollahs.
Right now, what they've been doing is rounding up members of Jewish synagogues, because they do allow Judaism there.
I know.
But they are now arresting them, calling them Mossad abettors.
Right. But I'll be honest with you, I seriously doubt that the spies that Israel had in Iran were Jewish. Just think about it. The smartest thing you can do would be to get Muslims or people that want to be free that have the access that can be able to do it.
Yeah.
Because the first thing you're going to think about, all those Jews did this, but it's much more rational to think that they would pick somebody else who is beyond suspicion. And I would think they would have been watching the Jews in Iran anyway. So, that's why let's just put it this way, it's not the way I would do it. I'm not going mm-hmm. to use people that are friendly to me or overtly friendly to me mm-hmm. to do undercover work. If I'm going to do it, I'm going to find somebody that suspect at all.
Yeah. As much as what the United States did with their bunker busters, the more significant damage to the nuclear threat was Mossad taking out killing
the scientists.
Right. Because if you've got all the scientists you need, then you can start right over again.
Right.
Okay. Then it is just a setback. But if you don't have the scientists, and keep in mind, these are scientists that have been fully vetted very carefully, and they built relationships. Now, they had lost some of them because of, about a year and a half ago, there was a nuclear accident in one of these facilities that some people think was Mossad sabotage, and it killed a bunch of technicians and scientists. Yeah. So that's the kind of thing that creates a setback. But if you're Israeli, if you're an American, you have to know vigilance is an eternal requirement.
Yeah. What bothers me about our media is that instead of focusing on what we know happened, they're focusing on what they would like to have happened. In other words, and which is crazy enough that they are actually pulling for the Iranians.
Yeah.
The hatred for Trump, it is totally TDS, Trump derangement system. syndrome. Sorry. I don't know what's wrong with me. I think I got up too early. I went to another meeting before we started today. But anyway, Trump derangement syndrome is it's not only prevalent, but it's metastasized. I mean, it's to the point where these people are insane. They are crazy with their hatred for Donald Trump. Anything that would sound good that Donald Trump could do, we're going to bury it. We're not going to see that. It didn't happen. Anything that they can bend to his detriment, they're going to champion that. And we don't care if we destroy our own country. We don't care if it's anti-American, if it's anti-whatever. We don't care. We got to get rid of that man because he is messing with what? And this is the thing. It's at the heart of it.
Mm-hmm.
Homosexuality. Homosexuality. That they are so... the gay lesbian lobby.
Okay, I could see that, but I think it's a lot bigger than that.
Well, no, but see, that right now is what is controlling the mentality in America. I have some neighbors.
Mm-hmm.
They have a daughter who's a lesbian. And we're having a hard time. They won't even speak to us anymore.
Yeah,
because we're Trump. They know we're Trump.
Yeah,
we're
I know.
Republicans, and they now have basically think that we've been friends. We've been friendly. We don't have any problem. That's your family. That's your deal. Great. We hope you're happy. They're happy, but it's like
they believe a lie.
Exactly, and it's gotten so. And that's what I believe because. Think of all the people, especially in the news media today, that either are gay or have a relative or friends that are gay.
Yeah.
So you're constantly faced with this, and that drives the whole a story we can get to a little bit later. The WNBA.
Okay.
And the hatred for.
But I want to stay with your central premise here.
Okay.
See, I think that's more a manifestation. They are stoking up people who have passionate causes, for instance, the homosexuals. They really are not just stoking, but developing this another one, the transgender, which is different than that. Then you've also got, they used to love to stoke up the radical feminists. Now they sold out the feminists, right? But it's the globalists looking for ways to manipulate parts of the population. But in the end, they will sell them out too.
Oh, yeah, sure. Obvious.
It's about power.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying, but everything that overarches anything you're seeing out there, it comes back to that. Scott Bassett, okay, he's the Secretary of Treasury. Okay, what's the guy's name?
Rich Grinnell.
Grinnell. They're gay.
Yeah.
Okay. Trump has them. These are powerful people.
It's their business.
Right. But what I'm saying is these are powerful people in the Trump administration, but Trump hates homosexuals. He hates gays.
According to the narrative.
Right, the narrative. And so they have stoked all of this.
Yeah.
And so these people that are all upset is because Trump wants to, he's going to, he's basically the representative of anything anti-gay.
Right.
And so, but that's the big thing. And they don't even care. This is the thing, Dave, which is weird. They are losing the Black and Hispanic vote just willy-nilly. I mean, it's just going out the window because they want to go after this group as these are our guys. And it's like watching TV. How many anti-cancer commercials do you see?
Oh, my God. Oh, geez, the pharmaceuticals.
No, but anti-cancer. I mean, specifically cancer. What I'm getting at is this. relative to all of a sudden, I can't watch a show without seeing AIDS medicines advertised and gay people. And this is on even on Fox and
yeah, I can see it on Fox, but I don't think I've seen it on Newsmax.
I'm not sure, but any movie I watch, any TV shows we watch, a series or whatever, you've got these, gay people living life, enjoying life with HIV. They're HIV positive, but now we've got a drug that can, hide it or cover it up or do whatever you want with it, And so this has become just a problem, I think, in America. In scripturally, if you think about it, just always think of the prophecy as it was in the day of Sodom, right? As it was in Sodom and Gomorrah. We're at that point. We're at that point where destruction is near.
Yeah.
I hate to put it any other way. I hate it. I don't want to think about it, but we're at the point, and what gets me is, why are people so bent on pushing this? I mean, it just baffles my mind. I don't understand it, how and why people, unless this is the ultimate expression of rebellion. The only thing I can think, the ultimate expression of rebellion.
Yeah, there's the people who buy the narrative, who get sucked up, like your neighbors in that, they live within this cocoon of, that's all they ever hear, so they believe it, right? Like your typical MSNBC or CNN viewer, they're going to believe the world's very different than if you're watching Newsmax.
Right.
And but what I've seen with the Democrat Party leadership, I've seen them sell out one constituency after another.
Yeah.
They've sold out the factory worker, largely sold out the union people, unless you're a government worker union.
Right.
But the manufacturing sector sold them out. Clinton did that. And the thing is, it takes decades for us to catch up with the fact that we've just been abandoned. And Trump brilliantly invited the Teamsters present to speak at the convention. He got different people. I mean, he literally gets some of the best thinkers, the best minds with the best discretion to be his advisors. Two of them make no secret about that they're homosexual.
Right, exactly.
But you know what? They don't make that my business.
Right.
So I respect they have a right to their own lives, just like I want respect with my life.
I'd say 80% of Trump supporters don't even know these guys are gay.
And J.D. Vance wisely told Joe Rogan just before the election, he says, the person that 20 years ago just wanted to be left alone, he wasn't like you and me, he's homosexual, and just wants us to let him live a life. He said that homosexual is a Trump supporter.
Right. That is true.
This other bunch is the in your face kind. They're believing a lie, and everybody's, they changed the narrative to all of a sudden, we went from sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me, to words are violence, right? And because you're saying something that hurts me, you're a bully, and now I can come after you violently because of you just stating your deeply held religious convictions. So everything's changing. The Democrat Party is being occupied by this radical woke bunch, and the whole woke thing is in itself a kind of brainwashing.
Oh, sure it is. It's totally a total brainwash.
Yeah.
And they don't even see that they are just marching towards destruction.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, destroying our nation, and foreign enemies look at it and say, this is great. Let's keep going down that road, I just don't understand it. I'm trying to figure out when and how. I mean, the only thing I can think of is to go back to Clinton, the Clintons.
Yeah.
But what's weird is if you look at Clinton today, the Clintons, Bill's terms, 2 terms, it wasn't that bad compared to where we are today. Right.
Yeah.
In fact, one of the things that's been reported on a lot in conservative circles and on our newscasts and so forth is how Bill Clinton spoke very directly against illegal immigration and deporting illegal immigrants. Same with Obama, even. But nobody wants you to remember that. Right.
Yeah, it went on the record as opposing gay marriage. Even Obama, he said civil unions, yes.
Right.
You know, but and then all of a sudden it changed, and nobody wants to be reminded that Obama was just as much opposition as G.W. Bush.
Right. And so the question is, why all of a sudden have things turned to the point where it's so aggressively, it's not enough anymore for us to be accepted. We have to be pushed to the forefront.
No, you said the magic words there. It's not enough. I have a cousin who is the legislative director for a US Congressman in Minnesota, very liberal. And I said, okay, how much will be, it was about spending on some social program. How much is enough? He said, just a little bit more. It's always just a little bit more. Their position is about pushing the envelope. What was their goal 10 years ago isn't enough anymore. And it's the constant changing thing. And this is also about the kinds of issues, because they don't want to fix problems. They want issues to get elected on.
Right. And the problem is there's suicidal issues.
Yeah.
Because if we go down that road, it will lead us to destruction, because China is not going to let homosexuality run their country. Russia is not going to let homosexuality run their country.
Nor will a Muslim country.
Or, yeah, that's another third of the world. Okay.
Yeah, they don't tell the people that. This is
right. But so let me ask you that, whether they tell them or not. My question is, how do you get people like Chuck Schumer and his ilk there in Congress? Even on the Republican side, there's some that feel that we've got to push this stuff. We got to push this stuff.
Well, yeah, but see, they don't.
Do they not see? They don't believe.
No, they don't believe it. They believe in power. They will use whatever lever, whatever issue gets them power.
So it won't reach us because we're at this higher level.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they'll get their power. Remember,
that's what they think.
Remember, they're for gun control because they have their own security. You know, they don't have to live under, or at least they don't believe they'll have to live under the things they advocate. And but the people, and here's the key to it, keep them from thinking. Encourage them feeling. It's an emotions-based effort. And fear is one of the most powerful things politically. Fear is very powerful.
Oh, yeah, sure it is.
And if you're just like your neighbor's been listening to all kinds of crap, telling them to not just fear Trump, but anybody who buys his stuff. You know. So that's the thing. They have believed a lie. To quote an old Willie George and Ken Copeland Christian movie, Gunslinger, Ken Copeland comes to town. He says, these people believed a lie and they died for it. After a shootout where most of the men in the town got killed. If you believe a lie, it can kill you. You don't want to believe a lie. So he's critical thinking. Honest questions. Ask them the questions that, I mean, like we had Bridenstine in here just last hour. And, you know, I said, look, there's just one thing I don't understand. I want to believe what you say about men going to the moon and this. And he explained it in a very rational, reasonable way. You got to confront the things that are uncomfortable, the things that you don't have an answer for, instead of just presuming.
Yeah.
You know, people live in their echo chambers and groupthink. That's the worst thing is groupthink. You know,
Yeah.
how many times have you reshared something on social media that made sense, and then somebody said, that's not really true, and you felt stupid because you shared it?
Yeah.
So, oh yeah, that's your phone. You actually are connected to Bluetooth. Turn this thing down.
No, but it's not on. The green light's not on.
Okay, somehow it's here in my headphones.
What, the buzzing?
A beep.
Oh, that is weird.
Maybe I wasn't. Well, anyway, so yeah, it's a crazy thing.
Oh yeah,
So-
yeah, it's totally nuts.
But here's the other thing, and this follows that same template, but it's in the financial sector. CNN wanted to believe that, they're going to come right back and they're going to be a problem. And they interviewed one guy, a Democrat congressman. He says, they're going to now take this nuclear program and go underground. Like, yeah, I know. We just bombed their most underground facility. It's like, how stupid can you be?
They're going to take it underground.
But
sounds like something Hank Johnson would say.
Yeah. So they don't want to believe that Trump could actually be successful. Let's take it to Jerome Powell in the Fed.
Oh, man.
Jerome Powell, his job is to respond to shifts in the market. Right? He's no longer following that. He's now believing his own unsubstantiated belief that tariffs are going to create massive inflation. And so instead of responding when it comes, he's now implementing ahead of time. Right. And it's costing the taxpayer close to $1 trillion in increased servicing on our debt.
And the crazy thing is, we are making money hand over fist on the tariffs. We are making more than we're losing.
Right, but he's afraid you'll make too much and it'll spur on inflation.
Right. Well, I don't care about inflation as long as we're able to pay our debt down.
Well, no, I mean, inflation, we've been through this. Inflation is a bad thing, right?
Oh, no.
It happens.
I understand, right. But inflation can only go for so long until the prosperity catches up to it.
Right. But what I'm saying here is Jerome Powell is, too far over his skis. His job is to respond to changes, not thinks he knows better than the market.
Well, I don't even, honestly, I'll be honest with you, I don't even think he really knows or thinks that. I think he is one of those people, again, in the anti-Trump, never Trump.
Exactly.
And it doesn't matter what, that's what I'm saying about the whole situation that we're talking about, that these people would rather see America destroyed than Trump be successful. I mean, that's how bad. I mean, seriously,
they actually believe that Trump is going to run the country in the ground. And so if Trump's going this way, then therefore it's the wrong thing. So follow me. And the problem is currently, how many young people can't afford a home? How many young people are paying way too much rent because of, the supply and demand's affecting things? How many people are missing that job promotion and the new job because they can't sell their old house in this town so they can move to that town and take the new job?
I don't think they're afraid of him running into the ground. They're actually afraid of him being successful.
Yes, but that's not what they're telling themselves.
Well, right.
They're lying to themselves.
Well, right. They're being told that lie.
And I think underneath it all, at the top level, it's just oppose Trump at any cost, by any means.
Exactly.
And we just saw the Supreme Court yesterday take away one of their big things is the ability of a local judge like the ones here in Tulsa to be able to stop a Trump policy position nationwide or globally.
Right, immigration.
Yeah, just by, putting a moratorium, putting a hold on it.
Right.
And the Supreme Court saying none of us here at the Supreme Court individually have that authority.
Right.
You're not going to have that authority. You can intervene on behalf of the plaintiff or defendant that comes to your courtroom. But doing this blanket stuff, no, you don't
have the power.
Huge victory.
Right.
Happen.
Oh, yeah. And it's funny. I mean, I'll tell you what's really interesting is you saw where Amy Coney Barrett attacked, what's her name, Brown.
Yeah, could you explain that? Because I'm not getting a really good, concise source of it. Could you wrap it up?
Yeah, Justice Brown. I can't think of her full name right now.
Ketanji Brown.
Yeah, maybe that's why.
Yeah, she's a hyphenated. Yeah.
Yeah, but anyway, she's the one who could not define what a woman is.
Right.
Remember, she did in the hearings, but anyway, she's one of basically all three of the Democrat-appointed justices voted against Trump's lawyers. Basically, let's back up. Trump's lawyers basically have a case that says district judges cannot make national rulings. That's the basic gist of what's happened.
More precisely, a temporary hold on a president's.
Well, on anything. I mean, they would like to, because that's just the camel's nose under the tent. Because if they have the authority to do that, they have the authority to undermine any national.
Right, but specifically what was happening was the vehicle of a hold while we litigate.
Yeah,
I'll give you what you want even before I hear the case.
Okay, who are we talking about now?
Any of these cases, this is the legal guideline, and it's under the guise of irreparable harm will happen if we don't intervene and stop this practice until we can establish that it's allowable.
Well, right, but what they're doing it so much in so many areas that it's basically throwing a wrench into immigration policy. Period. Mm-hmm. So the Supreme Court now has said you don't have the authority in a district court to adjudicate national policy.
Right. It's only for your specific plaintiff that you're there being represented.
Exactly. So, but that's what they were doing. They were doing the federal, trying to do the national policy, and they have cases everywhere. The ACLU and every anti-Christian liberties union and all the rest of them are trying to do whatever they can to stifle Trump's policies, and in this case, immigration. Okay, so Ketanji Brown basically, in her opinion, wrote that this is wrong, and I didn't read the opinion, so I don't know how exactly, but basically she, Kagan, and what's the other, Sotomayor, all three voted to stop Trump from doing this and support these district courts. And the rest of the justices, 6 out of the 9, said, the district courts don't have the jurisdiction and so forth.
Yeah.
And so Amy Coney Barrett basically just slammed Miss Ketanji Brown, or Mrs. Ketanji Brown, whatever she wants to be called. She just basically cut her down, saying that her reasoning essentially is totally without basis.
So Ketanji Brown wrote the minority opinion, right? Okay. And so what you specifically, to be real accurate, was she's going after that argument. Yeah. How do you not take it personally? Yes. It's like,
you're talking about how does Ketanji Brown not take it personally, what Amy Coney Barrett did?
Yeah, right. I mean, saying it wasn't.
Well, it was personal. I mean,
well, yes. I mean, to be honest, it's that argument is crap. Is basically what she was trying to say.
Yeah.
But she didn't say you're an idiot and you're ugly too. It was not that personal. It was that argument is full of crap.
Right, but in the end, it comes out as the same thing.
Yeah, exactly. Eventually, stupid is and stupid does.
Yeah, right, exactly.
And, here's the other thing. Kagan, just 3 years ago, when a judge who some people think was really conservative was stopping or putting a hold on a Biden policy. And she says, you can't do that. I mean, here she is. To me, Kagan should not even have sat shouldn't be able to vote on this. She should have recused because she already stated her opinion. And then she votes opposite because it's a different guy in the White House.
Yeah, but you can't really do that, because if you do that, then you could keep Justice Thomas and others from, because
this happened when they were actually being confirmed at their hearings.
No,
there are things they could not. They says that may come before me, so I choose not to respond.
Right, but what I'm saying about Clarence Thomas, everybody knows his opinion, his position, et cetera, et cetera. That's why they're trying to get rid of him. They're trying to use almost the same argument.
Right, but these justices are being smart and very cagey in how they respond, because they can be accused of demonstrating prejudice before they hear the case. And clearly Kagan did. You know, she spoke on principle, saying one local judge should not be able to stop a presidential order.
Yeah.
She said that
she
3 years ago.
Right, exactly, which shows what a hypocrite she is.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, and now keep in mind, we're talking about the two most lucid. When you get to the third one,
Sotomayor.
I'm sorry. You thought some of these other judges had lost it, like what's her name? That just died. Ginsburg. Yeah. You know,
Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
Yeah, she wanted to hang on, and she's just way past her prime, you know?
Yeah, we've got basically 2.5 years to see if she hangs up, because you remember last year, the Democrats were trying to get her to step down from the court because they saw and they were afraid she could die or be just senile or whatever. And then Trump gets to nominate yet another. Then it'd be 7-2 versus 6-3 right now. So.
Yeah, but Ginsburg had already gone through 2 different cancers treatment, you know, and stuff. And
but this is different. Sotomayor apparently is losing it. Mentally. Yeah.
So is Joe. You know?
That doesn't stop a Democrat, does it?
You see, trying to convince somebody, listen, I've got some experience dealing with people who lost it up here. You know, what I'm talking about is, you know, an intervention for somebody with a mental illness and psychosis. But you know what? Dementia is a distinction without a difference in many ways. And trying to convince somebody you need help, and they're the last to know they need help. You know, so
wouldn't that be wonderful though, if they were able to get Trump were able to nominate yet another one.
Oh, I remember when Ginsburg died, I saw this Facebook video. This woman, she's just losing it. You had one job. You couldn't live 6 more months. You know, just like, it's just.
You had one job.
Because that's what led to the Amy Coney Barrett, which led to the Dobbs decision, getting rid of Roe versus Wade. It was, she kicked the bucket 6 months too soon.
Yeah.
You know, so it's,
oh man,
that's what happens.
Politics is awful, really. It's awful. It wasn't, yeah. So anyway, I guess we can wrap it up here today.
Well, I've got some sports.
I was getting ahead to sports, but go ahead.
Yeah.
It might be the same thing.
I tell you what, you and I have talked about all this, you know, the NCFL, we've talked about the pay for play. I mean, we basically have no salary caps and total free agency,
right.
But we talk about the super conferences. And where we left it, when about year and a half ago, we started talking about this realignment and how the Big 12 came out shining. ACC somehow sucked it up and kept it together. We really thought they were the ones. Well, the Pac-12, we left for dead. Well, the Pac-12 went shopping. And now it's the
two teams.
Yeah. Now, they waited it out because if they keep the conference doors open for a certain amount of time, they get all the money that these other people that left get. So now that that's done, the Mountain West, I said, that's going to be the next one that they're just going to pick away. And I found out 5 schools are joining the Pac. 4 of them from the Mountain West. So San Diego State, who definitely should have been in the Pac. I mean, they're the ones that brought us Marshall Faulk 20 years ago. They're just fantastic. So you got them. Fresno State, reasonable. Utah State went there. Okay. Colorado State, who's really started to play some pretty good ball. So those have come on. Then they took your old stomping grounds, UTEP, out of Conference USA, straight from Conference USA to the Pac-12. Yeah.
That's interesting.
So now what's going to happen to Mountain West? And remember, they split off from the Western Athletic Conference, the WAC, right? And the WAC is really bothering.
Question, what conference is Boise State in?
Oh, yeah, that's one that came over.
Okay, that's what I was going to say, because they should have been the first one.
Well, a lot of people thought that the Big 12 should have taken them, and there's a good argument for that.
Yeah, you're right.
But anyway, the Pac-12, as it got that going on, now the WAC, or not, the Mountain West, they're starting to grab some, and I think my brother-in-law's alma mater, he's a big booster for South Dakota State.
See, that's what I've been wondering. Why is South Dakota State, North Dakota State, and I think it's South Dakota is the other one. I think South Dakota, both, they have 2 teams that are always in there. Really,
North Dakota State, which, who's that the Red A quarterback for Philly a few years ago? Weiss or what?
Oh, yeah. He's the backup to Mahomes now.
Right.
I forget.
Yeah, he came out of North Dakota State.
Okay, right.
But in South Dakota State, which won like 3 years in a row, won that Division II. That's the next lower division.
Yeah.
But so you got people like that coming over, and now they're looking for some football-only schools. What I didn't mention, though, is here's the 8th school. The Pac needed 8 schools, the Pac-12, in order to get in the playoff.
To get to 10, yeah, they had to have 10.
They picked this upstart from San Marcos, Texas State.
Oh, okay.
So that's going to be the 8th school.
What's the one in it's UT San Antonio. Yeah, but Texas State, the one to me to watch is
North Texas.
UTSA.
Yeah, San Antonio, yeah.
Yeah, that's the one that really, I think, do you know how many students UTSA has?
I heard it's a massive amount.
70,000.
Yeah, man.
Nobody's ever. Now, of course, a lot of them are home based because it's in San Antonio, and they, but still 70,000. Texas Tech has 40,000.
Yeah,
and Texas has 80-some thousand.
Yeah,
but 70,000 in San Antonio.
Yeah,
I mean, that's crazy. So they definitely hear me now, believe me later, but within the next probably 5 years, they will be up in D1 into the big leagues. Yeah,
no doubt. And really, because Texas is such a good football market for TV, it's good for recruiting. More than recruiting. Because that's where that in California and Florida. Those are the 3 schools. And then Ohio.
Well, the population too in San Antonio. San Antonio, I think, has like 9 million people.
You got that whole corridor from Austin to San Antonio. Yeah. It's that's like
why you
one
can't.
Town after another.
You can't. There aren't enough lanes on the road. It's just bumper to bumper all the way to Austin and Waco, Austin. It lightens up a little bit when you get south of Austin, but it's a nightmare trying to drive that drive. Yeah. So this is, some amazing things happening. Now, it won't affect this next school year. It'll be the year after that you'll see that alignment. And I don't know what's going to happen. ACC somehow seems to find a way to hold things together. We thought a year ago Florida State was gone. Yeah. And but what happened here? Got Florida State and Miami. Those are the 2. Miami, and I don't know why Clemson and North Carolina. That's so. There's 4 schools right there that could be. Now, here's what could happen. I would love to see it. Have those 4 join the Big 12 to make it the Big 16. Because the SEC are they 16 or 18? SEC is like, and in the Big Ten, they both have at least 16 teams.
Wait a minute. We've got 16 right now
In the Big 12?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Excuse me.
Yeah, I know things happen fast. You know?
Yeah.
But the SEC, aren't they close to 20? And same with the Big Ten getting close.
I know it's a lot. Do they have 18 then?
I think so. Yeah.
Maybe it's 18. So
yeah,
we've got room for a couple more. And but I think that the Florida teams would do well to come to the Big 12.
And that was the reason, remember, my long shot prophecy that came out exactly spot on. I said the Big 12 needs these 4 schools. Mm-hmm. The one that everybody scratched their head on was when I said University of Central Florida. Florida, having a Florida school is so helpful for recruiting.
Yeah.
And, a lot of people think, why? But every coach knows why.
Right. See, the thing that helped the Big 12, and this year they didn't do so well, but it is basketball.
Yeah.
Basketball is the thing that really helps the Big 12.
And, I have to say, top to bottom, it's still the best conference. Houston really did us well.
Oh, yeah.
And what I'm sad about Houston as a new member is their football kind of fell apart. They were really good right before they came to us. And then Cincinnati, same thing. The Bearcat football was awesome.
You're right.
But you're going to have that.
Yeah. No, they can rebuild, come back, and they should with the new power conference. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
But it's one of the reasons why Ohio State's always a good football team is it's a big sport, not just in Ohio, but Western Pennsylvania. Pittsburgh area, a lot. Joe Montana came from Western Pennsylvania, So anyway, that was the one sports I thought, we never did talk about this. We knew it was coming, but now we're seeing it. So you got a revitalized pack.
Yep. I was actually going to talk about the WNBA and Caitlin Clark.
Yes. There's that. Oh, by the way, just a real quick, the Thunder.
Yeah, I don't know how we didn't. Yeah. I was thinking, was that the week before this week?
No, it was Sunday
it was
night.
The Thunder. They first time national champions. That's
just
what? Wonderful.
They set all kinds of records. Evidently, it was the best win-loss record of any team in the NBA.
And what's interesting, what it shows though, what's really the cool thing about it is that no superstars. You didn't have a Kevin Durant. You didn't have a Michael Jordan. You didn't have a Kareem.
Right. 13, 14 years ago when they were in the finals.
Right.
And against LeBron and that. Okay, we already knew that Durant was good.
Right.
But Harden
and Westbrook,
they were still up and coming. I mean, they said about them, this is a young team. They literally rebuilt. Mm-hmm. And that's what happened here. Just 2 years ago, Thunder were one of the worst teams.
Yeah. Now, what's weird is we say we don't have any superstars or name guys, but what's the main guy? He ended up being the MVP of the whole NBA. Mm-hmm. But he's got the 2 names.
Alexander, something or other.
Or something Alexander.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. So, but it's just so nice how humble they all are. And they're a team. They are.
That's it.
They like each other. They're that's the problem. In LA, I don't think could ever win because there's too many personalities, and too many superstars, and it's just they don't play well together. So, but no, I was worried. I have to confess, I was a little worried there.
Well,
and I wonder if that guy hadn't torn his
Halliburton.
Yeah, Halliburton.
Boy, did that look tendon. Nasty. I knew enough when I saw all of a sudden that distended ankle alpha when the heel goes down to the floor. Oh my God, that's an Achilles total rip.
Yeah. It's bad, but and so you feel bad for him, but at the same time, you have to wonder, and I'm sure Indiana's thinking it. Would we have won with him there? and Halliburton remained with.
Well, they ran out of gas, right? I mean, they were leading at halftime.
Yeah.
They all sucked it up.
But he went down the third quarter there.
No, if it was middle of the first.
Oh, was it in the middle of the first?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's why I thought, because when I saw that, I told my wife, I said, look at that ankle. I said, he just totally ripped his Achilles.
Mm-hmm.
I said, it's over. And then at halftime, I'm like, I thought it was over. Over. But then that third quarter, that's where they really poured it on. And, the depth of the team. There's people not used to playing, 20, minutes. They're used to coming in to give Halliburton a little breather and then Halliburton go back in.
Yeah.
And anybody can, pour everything they got into it for about 3 or 4 minutes on the court. But
see, that's another thing. I mean, you look at the two teams, both teams.
Mm-hmm.
You had Indiana and you had Oklahoma City.
Mm-hmm.
Before this playoffs, had you ever heard of Halliburton?
They're an oil company down in in Oklahoma.
Thank you. Had you in the NBA?
Right.
Had you ever heard of?
No,
me either. And so and then we end up having the MVP. That I didn't know anything about this guy.
Right.
So it just shows. But all you hear all the time is what? LeBron.
Yeah.
Kevin Durant, and then you have the Eastern Europeans, the Russian guy, and
what you're seeing is the big market, big franchises. I mean, Boston did okay, but New York teams, they're trying to sell the Lakers right now, hoping to get $8 billion for them. Lakers was always that marquee team,
right?
And I just think you've got a collapse. And I would expect that the viewership is down because you don't have good teams in the big markets.
Yeah. And that's because they keep paying these names, these marquee names. And that's kind of over. People, I think, are burned out with that.
Mm-hmm.
We're ready to get back to a collective team thing. That's why Indiana, the girls, the Fever, does so well. Caitlin Clark drew it to it, but there's a team mentality.
Mm-hmm.
The people are bought into the Fever, not into Caitlin Clark necessarily.
Yeah, especially with this new gal come on that's really, I mean, she's
Kelsey.
She's photogenic. She's good.
Oh, no, you're talking about Lindsay. I think it's Lindsay something.
Yeah.
Or something Lindsay.
Yeah, really tall, blonde, yeah.
Yeah, but see, she's the sixth man. She's not even a starter.
Yeah.
Well, it made her popular why she's come on. Because in that game where the girl attacked Caitlin, she took her and threw her off the court.
Mm-hmm.
And then they were getting ready to get into it. It was good to see. But I honestly still think Caitlin Clark should have gone to Europe. She had an opportunity to go last year, $100 million they were going to pay her to play in one of them foreign countries. And because the WNBA, it's becoming more and more clear. People are starting to write about it. What's his name that works for the Blaze, the black guy? He used to be on Fox Sports. I can't think of his name right now. Anyway, he just did a whole piece on it, and they just do not respect. It's full of lesbians. I don't know if you mentioned this earlier, and they hate Caitlin Clark because of what she stands for.
Really? Nobody really told me what she stands for that I'm supposed to be so offended by. Because she has stayed as non-political as she can.
Oh, no, she has, but she has a boyfriend. And
how dare that?
Yeah. Well, here's the deal.
The hussy.
Yeah. Well, the girl who's a friend of hers, actually, they're friends, but that went to
Dallas. Right. The former UConn player.
Yeah, the UConn. Yeah. So, I mean, they're just pumping her and plugging her, and they're just praising her, the media, all the time now. And it's because, and she's just come out, it's been revealed she has a girlfriend. So these are the things that we have to deal with. This is the thing. that America is faced with today. That again, I get back to our earlier conversation that the gay nation, and here's what's sad. Here's what's really sad. You have people like the two guys we know of in the Trump administration, but there are many, many, many more that they just want to, whether we agree with it or not, they just want to live their lives.
They want, do your job, do it well, and they do.
Right, they do, and just don't worry about our, sexual preference or whatever. Okay,
don't make it my business.
Don't make it my business. Exactly, but it's not enough. In the WNBA, these girls came in. Same with soccer, girls soccer. Finally, they got rid of Rapinoe. And because she literally, I think, set back the WSL, because she was so, she was forcing girls, the heterosexual Christian girls and heterosexual girls that were coming in, driving them away.
Sure.
And so, and talented girls. And so, and if I'm a parent, and I'm not going to want my daughter to go play with her, and so it's just one of these deals where I think Caitlin Clark I think she'd be happier in Europe, to be honest with you. She could make a whole lot more money, no hassle, whatever. But she chose, she's faithful to her country and the league. And so, but somehow the league is going to have to come to grips with this, or it's going to be destroyed again.
What really happened? I mean, longtime customers, my business, a family, pretty wealthy family. Their daughter, full scholarship, play soccer for Missouri many years ago, and the hazing, the lesbian hazing, is horrible.
Oh, I believe it.
And she literally, her soccer career was ended in a scrimmage within her own squad. They literally took her knee out, ripped it to shreds at practice.
Right. Oh, yeah.
Scrimmage, and it's just, you talk about propensity for violence. Oh, yeah. I mean, what you're seeing in the WNBA is a side of very violent women.
Right. Yeah. But that's the thing about the Fever now, that they have these, 2 strikes against them. You have heterosexual white women. Yeah. 2 of them are blondes. That's another thing. So, and they can't stand that these 3 are dominating the media.
Yeah.
Because they're winning. And what's interesting, actually the best player on the team right now is this. It's a black girl, Kelsey something is her name, but anyway, she's scoring, like 25 points a game or something. She's really good. I mean, she can shoot like crazy, And in fact, they just beat the Dallas team the other night. They won another one, but without Caitlin Clark, because she's been out. She's got an injury. And you can tell, and like the other night, she hit 1 out of 12 3-point shots, 1 out of 12. So that's not her. That's something not right with her. So she needs to just sit out, rest up, and I don't know. It's sad that sports has come down to that. Bottom line, shut up and play the game. I mean, that's all you got to do. Just
Eddie.
Shut up and play the game.
I get so sick of it. I will watch, whether it's the Super Bowl, and then they got to put this, the Black national anthem.
Right.
I almost want to just boycott the sport altogether.
In football, it's race. In female sports, it's the sexual orientation. And it's, whatever you are in football, if you're white, you feel like a second-class citizen. In women's professional basketball, if you're straight, you're a second-class
my
citizen.
problem more often is with the commentators in the play-by-play than the athletes. But who I think is doing this well is Stephen A. Smith.
Yeah.
it's clear he's entered the realm of politics, but when he's analyzing, like we were watching the pregame and postgame last Sunday night championship, we're here to talk about the game of basketball, period. And he did that. I mean, I'm just sick. I used to like Bob Costas until he decided that he had the right to be political.
Yeah.
Like, I'm done with you.
Yeah. Yeah, he killed himself. Yeah, he killed himself.
Yeah. So it's just sad. What was it? Humphrey Bogart said, all a performer owes his public is a good performance, and you just do your job.
Right.
I mean, you go to concerts anymore because pop culture music is big time about having some cause. I remember the only time I was in the arena over there at Oklahoma City was actually for a Coldplay concert. My son had tickets to it and that. And they, to their credit, they were basically doing what you're doing. They were finding ways for third world countries and farmers and stuff to find easier ways to get their product directly to consumers. And they're doing whatever they could on that. And okay, that's helping the little guy. That's good. But it was a cultural and a social issue without bashing this politician or that politician. Yeah. But how many times do we have to suffer Taylor Swift? Well, she lost me a long time ago. I almost want to turn off the Kansas City Chiefs because of her.
Yeah, I think she's hurt them. I think she's actually hurt them.
Yeah. It was just, this is just sad.
Yeah, we better wrap it up. Hey, I hope you enjoyed the Jim Bridenstine. That was impromptu. I had breakfast with Jim and a couple other guys. We meet every couple of weeks or so. Yeah. And he's been wanting to come on, and we've always had other guests and on. So I called Dave to see if we didn't have anybody today. So I said, Jim, you want to come with me? He said, yeah.
By the way, I'm wearing this. This is actually an argument on Eddie's side of the issue of convention states, because he largely agrees with some of my John Birch Society friends of what makes you think they'll listen to and obey the words of a new constitution if they're ignoring the words of the last one.
Yeah, but my thing is more that if we can change the Constitution or think we can to benefit our side, what's to keep George Soros and others that have more money and more ambition from eliminating the First and Second Amendment? Yeah, basically, that's the problem.
So you can't see the message at the bottom. It says the Constitution doesn't need to be rewritten; it needs to be reread. So
that is good.
Yeah, I figured you'd appreciate
and refollowed.
Yes, But we're celebrating Independence Day this coming weekend.
Oh yeah, man, it's already here, isn't it?
Yeah. Yep. But next Saturday is actually the day after the 5th, and I've got a fellow that wants to come in, and I was hoping to have him in today, but he had logistic issues. But he's somebody I've cited. Believe it or not, he's been living largely a life of a homeless transient, both here and out in California, A
bum from California. No, I'm just messing with you.
But he will very much surprise you because he's quite an enigma and a very good communicator.
Well, it'll be good because I want to talk to him because, my opinion, I'm not pro-homeless.
Right.
And so.
But he actually explains a lot of things. Like you and I are upset when you see downtown LA people crapping in the street. Right. And we blame that on the homeless. And yeah, I'm sure that's right. But I was in Manhattan a couple summers ago. And I just took the subway up to Central Park, and I'm walking around by Trump Towers because he's just a few blocks off. And I gotta use the bathroom. And I don't mean I need a bush to crawl behind, and water a bush. I mean, I need to sit down.
Right.
And I couldn't find any place that had a public bathroom in downtown Manhattan.
Yeah.
You know, and like, no wonder. If you don't have public bathrooms, don't be surprised if people just can't hold it anymore.
Yeah.
So, you know, these are the kinds of things that I think he can give us a better perspective on.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I know that whole deal. I had that experience in Venice.
Mm-hmm.
And Venice, Italy. You know, there's no place to sit down on the whole, you know, no place with chairs outdoor, little cafes. Yeah. And then bathrooms now, you know. And so if you better be peed up or whatever you want to say, either that or maybe that's why the water is contaminated. You're not allowed to, you know, if you go in there, you might just die of poisoning from the water around Venice.
You know, you've done missionary work in Europe. Aren't there big cities where they have pay toilets?
Oh yeah. You got to pay. Yeah, but see, that's the thing too. The reason that restaurants don't open their bathrooms and so forth anymore is because a lot of it, junkies were going shooting up.
Mm-hmm.
So what they tried to do then, they put blue light bulbs in there. Because the veins won't show.
You can't find the vein,
You can't find the vein.
Mm-hmm.
So they tried to use that. That probably because I think guys got little flashlights and, you know, and you know, ingenuity. It's funny, you know, what's it? Necessity is the, what is it? The mother of invention or whatever.
Yeah.
But so they basically closed down all the public bathrooms.
Yes.
And what does it do? The homeless, they're in the streets. They got to go.
And that's why, you know, Robert
Kennedy.
No, the Crystal Cathedral.
Schuller.
Robert Schuller explained to me back when I was in college studying business. He said, you want to be a success, find a need that's not being met and meet it. That's how you get successful.
Yeah.
Somebody want to start a company building public restrooms. There you go. I mean, they're already doing it all over Europe. You know, LA, hello.
Yeah, and then just get the city to pay for it.
Yeah.
I mean, you might as well to keep people from crapping on the roads or the streets and whatever. Just say, city, you pay us so much, and we'll set up these private bathrooms public bathrooms for the homeless and whatever, and then at least you keep that off the streets.
You know how the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority did? When they built the original sponge, they would have restaurants along the way that had exclusive, right? Because I mean, I think it was Howard Johnson's was originally changed. The one that is McDonald's now. Yeah. But you stop there and the state doesn't have to provide a wayside rest. They had wayside rest, but all they had was picnic tables and trash cans, you know, but you want a place to use the toilet. So it was a way to shift a cost from taxpayer to a user fee, you know, so anyway, so next week, hopefully we will have him in.
That'll be interesting. It'll be interesting.
Then in 2 weeks, we might start live a little bit later, and the second half of our show will be able to sit down with our candidate for Attorney General, the only one in the race right now, John Eccles.
Wow, that would be.
So we're going to have a good next couple of weeks. Stay tuned, stay with us, and share this with your friends, especially the Bridenstine segment. That's fantastic today.
Yeah, sure is. All right. See you next week.
Yeah.